It catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are, of course, as we've just been discussing with MG, at the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very much appreciate you joining me. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device, as I say, always so grateful to have your company. Lots and lots to talk about today, as per usual. When do we ever get a quiet day? Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about the PM warning that we can no longer take peace for granted. This after announcing the UK will expand nuclear deterrence with jets carrying tactical nuclear weapons. It also comes after a government review of threats to the nation's security, which concluded that Britain must actively prepare for a direct attack on the country in a wartime scenario. Well, isn't it a good thing? We've got a NATO summit going on right now. Donald Trump and others all arrived last night. Now, this what's interesting, of course, Donald Trump is declaring this victory in the Middle East. It does look like that ceasefire between Iran and Israel is holding, despite some fruity language while we were on air yesterday. But according to an initial assessment by US government itself, with low confidence, it does say low confidence, but initial assessment has been leaked to, I think it was CNN initially. US military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities did not do as much damage as Donald Trump has claimed. It certainly did not obliterate Iran's nuclear program and may have just set it back by only a few months. Well, the president has insisted the report is fake. Meanwhile, I think more importantly to a lot of people in the immediate issue this month is Keir Starmer facing a growing rebellion to his welfare reforms, with more than 120 backbench Labour MPs now signed up to an effort to block plans to cut disability and sickness benefits that would save £5 billion a year by 2030. I have to say, it's not enough of a saving, but the PM has vowed to press ahead with the vote, which is due next Tuesday, which could be the first parliamentary defeat of his premiership. Some people are talking about this as a confidence vote in the Prime Minister. Is it? Isn't it? I want to know from you, do you support his reforms, or do you support the rebel MPs in standing up to them? Tell us why. Maybe you don't support his reforms or the Rebel MPs, and like me, you think they don't go far enough. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate. Message, of course, they're free on X, and you can leave a message on our YouTube page as well. And if you haven't taken a look at talkTV's YouTube page, you can watch us in full Technicolor glory, or if you missed anything from the show or missed anything from yesterday, if I say so myself, bit of a stonking show, not me, just a fabulous guest. Do take a look at my own YouTube page. It's called, I know, this is so clever, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you can hit subscribe and then you will never miss a thing. Right now, let me introduce you to our guest joining us for all the show, as always on a Wednesday, former Conservative Special Advisor Claire Pearsall. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Well, where do we start? Now, I know everyone else is starting, all the way as a media, but we're not normal media, are starting with what's going on in NATO and defence. These are very big issues. We've talked about them an awful lot. I would like, though, to discuss where we are with welfare reform, because fundamentally, we can't afford to rearm until we've got some money to do so. Given we're spending, over 100 billion every year in just paying the interest on, not paying off our debts, paying the interest on our national debt, which is more than double the current defence budget, which tells you something. We need to cut some other spending. Now, we would all like to be able to get treatment if we've got cancer. We'd like our children to be educated. There is an awful lot of waste to be got rid of. No government that's come in and said they're going to deal with waste. Even, by the way, Trump's government has managed to actually do it. Good luck reform if they do get in and they do try and do it. Hey, I'd love to. I will come in and head that department for you. I'm sure we can get talk audience to come in and sort that out for you, no problem. But welfare is a huge ballooning cost for the state. Now, part of that is pensions. It is people getting older and they need more help. Fair enough. I think that's a good news story, right? We're living longer. This is a good thing. Shame a lot of us aren't living longer in better health. That's something that needs to be tackled. However, we've also got a huge number of working age people who are sitting on their fat backsides, often they are fat backsides, and not doing anything. We've also got a lot of people who are disabled and claiming sickness benefits. But we've also got a lot of people who are claiming those benefits who would not be what I think most people would regard as unable to work. We have something like 1 in 8 people claiming these sort of benefits. So it's up to 30% in some cities. Yeah,
it's enormous.
The idea that 1 in 3 working age people have some disability or sickness that prevents them from working, frankly, is a nonsense. And anyone who thinks that is the case is living in cloud cuckoo land. It's unsustainable, it's unaffordable. Keir Starmer and Liz Kendall, the Welcome Pension Secretary, they have put forward a set of welfare reforms to personal independence payments, to sickness benefits. A plan is to get 800,000 people who would otherwise be able to claim, not claiming these benefits. They reckon they're going to save 5 billion quid from the welfare bill by 2030. It will still go up by, even if they do this, 13 billion quid a year, every year. By 2030, so it's not even touching the size. But the welfare bill's not going to come down; it's going to go up by a lower amount. He's facing a huge threat to his authority as Prime Minister. More than 120 MPs, including committee chairs like Meg Hillier, who chairs the Public Accounts Committee for years, have signed on to a bill, or to an amendment, I suppose call it an amendment, which would basically throw out their reforms like that. First of all, can you explain what this bill, because it's a special kind of parliamentary procedure, but also how significant is this, given that we are not even a full year into Keir Starmer's premiership?
Well, if we look at what the amendment actually is, it's something called a reasoned amendments, and this is where parliamentary nerds like myself get quite excited at this kind of process, because what a reasoned amendment is changing the wording of a motion. So if you have a motion in front of the House, which is what this welfare reform bill is,
we're going to do X.
We are going to do X. A reasoned amendment comes along and is basically the parliamentary equivalent of saying yes, but no, we don't like it. So it changes it from being supportive to rejecting it. Now, if that passes...
And that will go before the full vote for the...
Absolutely. Now, so you have to have your amendments selected. So there's a whole procedure still to go through. So Keir Starmer's not off the hook yet, but it's also not deemed...
But I think there are 130 MPs in total, 120 Labour MPs who signed this. it would be quite extraordinary if Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, didn't agree to this.
Absolutely. But it is obviously a matter for the Speaker.
Yeah.
He will go into conference on Tuesday morning next week and see if that amendment will be selected. Now, if it is, it goes in front of the House of Commons, and that's where the real problems will start for Keir Starmer, because there is enormous pressure upon him to get this bill through. As you've just said, we need to look at
this kills
reform.
it off completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, OK.
Absolutely. And so this would look like a confidence motion, despite every cabinet minister being out on the media saying, no, it absolutely isn't, it's fine.
Except one MP claimed that a minister had said to them, this is effectively a confidence vote of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And you've seen it with the Conservative Party over the past 14 years.
And they've called it this, they say it's flagship reform. I mean, it's nothing of the sort. It's
not.
It's literally fiddling while Rome burns level of reform.
Yeah.
But if he can't get through even that tiny amount of reform, he has no authority.
He doesn't, and his backbench MPs are now feel emboldened with what's happened with the winter fuel allowance when they took it away and they all had to take the grief off their constituents, and rightly so. Then they came back with a U-turn. So I think those MPs are saying, well, if it gets really difficult, we know he's going to U-turn anyway, and we've got nothing to lose. And I think they're now realising that quite a lot of them are not going to be cabinet ministers ever.
Yeah.
So they've got nothing to lose. So they're going to stand up for this, and it wasn't in the Labour manifesto. They think that they have the power.
Nothing was in the Labour manifesto.
No.
But again, at the end of the day, they're going to be facing, if he's got a budget, that's coming up, or, spending, or whatever the latest fiscal event in the autumn, Rachel Reeves announcing that. And even the stuff they're announcing, and we'll come on to this in terms of NATO, this 5% of GDP pledge, I mean, not till 2035, and it's meaningless, a lot of it's not actually defence spending. It's going to be far too little, far too late. But there ain't any money for any of it. No. I mean, nothing, and pledges mean nothing if you haven't got the money, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy you a Ferrari, Claire.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's my pledge. Well, if I haven't got the money to buy you a Ferrari, then it's meaningless pledge. And that's where we are in terms of defence spending. And we definitely don't have the money when we carry on spaffing, whatever the term is, money up the wall on perfectly able-bodied people and able-minded people not working and living off everybody else. I mean, this is one of the issues, isn't it? I mean, look, he's got a working majority, Keir Starmer, of 156. Yeah. These MPs voting against it. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has basically said, look, I'll vote for you, I'll support you so you can get your measure through, but it has to go further, faster, you have to pledge this and that. So conditions. More cuts. He's not going to agree to that. It's probably likely to be something that was brought up at PMQs today. It's actually Deputy PMQs again, with grandstanding Prime Minister on the world stage rather than taking questions from backbench MPs. No, it's an important point, how very convenient.
Yes,
Angela Rayner's there again, but I'm assuming not Kemi Badenoch, maybe Mel Stride. The Shadow Chancellor.
Yeah, we're not sure, are we? We haven't been told yet. So
he knows.
Burkhardt
he knows his welfare though.
Yeah,
so I'm wondering whether he'd go up on that. But again, votes next Tuesday. They could pull the vote. They could. But if he backtracks on this, I mean that U-turn over winter fuel. Well, again, that was a good U-turn. But he shouldn't have made the mistake in the first place. But the idea that any other Prime Minister would be. Other than Liz Truss, that any other with a working majority that he has be unable to get through what he has called a sort of flagship welfare reform after all these big debates and things is. He's a laughingstock at this point.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And it's quite interesting to see the behavioural change within the Labour Party. So if you speak to MPs, and I overheard a couple walking down a corridor, so I was listening into their conversation, they are... in public place, they are unimpressed that the Cabinet are not communicating with them. They are unimpressed that they cannot get through to number 10 to ask what's going on, how can they help, or what can they do. And the only time they ever hear from people is to be told not to do something. Yeah. So they're feeling very unloved.
A lot of arrogance in number 10. Yeah, and again, and they haven't got mandate from the electorate. They got they've got they haven't got the love from the electorate. It was we don't want the Tories anymore. We need to punish them for failing vote, not good Labour one. Yeah. I mean, I was a political journalist working in the Commons when Tony Blair was in for his first year. The feeling, the authority that he had and that Gordon Brown had, so different. Well, look. We need to save money to spend money on things that really matter, and also, by the way, and give people their money back that they're paying massive taxes for and not feeling like they're getting anything. Small point worth making. But one of the things we do need to spend more money on, I believe, is defence. We've got the NATO summit. We've just been seeing actually I've got in The Hague some big photo of. I couldn't see quite where it's kind of screen above me. Couldn't see quite where Keir Starmer was today, but certainly in the official photo op when they arrived yesterday, he put himself in the back row. Mate, you have the nuclear deterrent. You're a permanent member of the Security Council. You're in the front row, mate. You're in the front row. Macron's in the front row. So he doesn't even understand. I don't want to see the British Prime Minister in the back row behind, with all due respect, Latvia and Estonia. With all due sodding respect. Yeah. You know, we're a player, you're not. That's how it works. I mean, again, he doesn't understand these niceties. I mean, Trump does. So he turns up. Some choice language. Should we have a little listen? Because a lot of this is about what's been going on in Iran. There's got to be focused on Ukraine, but a lot of it's what's going on in the Middle East. Let's have a little watch and a listen while we were on air yesterday. Donald Trump being asked about the ceasefire that didn't at that time appear to be a ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
I mean, it was certainly very choice language. I'm always amazed that politicians don't swear more in real life, but there we are. But I managed not to do it on air, and I'm a potty mouth off there, I can assure you. Now, I mean, UK's been told they need to prepare for a wartime scenario. That we're thinking Europe. Donald Trump has basically made it really clear, I don't really want anything to do with what's going on in Europe. My mate Putin in Russia, you know, he's the victim in the Ukraine war as far as Donald Trump's concerned. But he does get it on Israel and Iran. He's been praised. We've had Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, a message he sent to Donald Trump, which I imagine he planned to be private, which was read out by Donald Trump. I mean, this is, "Dear Donald, congratulations and thank you for your decisive action in Iran. That was truly extraordinary and something no one else dared to do. It makes us all safer. You are flying into another big success in The Hague this evening. It was not easy, but we've got them all signed on to 5%. Donald, you have driven us to a really, really important moment for America." I mean, it goes on and on and on. He knows how to play and how to flatter this guy, and clearly everyone is just treating him like the king. You know, that's what they're doing. Should they be doing that? Is that what's right? And are they right to sign up to this 5%? Well, apart from Spain, 5% of GDP?
Yeah, I think we've underspent on defence for decades, and so is Europe. And we are by far...
Germany especially.
Absolutely. We're better. I mean, when you look at the amount Germany hasn't been spending, and you look at the wars that are on your doorstep, and it's very easy when it's been peacetime to say we don't need all of these armed force personnel, we don't need jets, we don't need tanks, all the rest of it. You know, war has changed right up until the point where it hasn't. Yeah. And I think that realisation to people that warfare on the ground hasn't gone away. There are always going to be people willing to throw missiles and rockets at you. So you need to defend yourself. Yeah. So I think that's absolutely right.
And provide that deterrence. And again, a lot of that is the willingness, not just the ability. We're going to be buying a whole load of jets to expand our nuclear deterrent. So jets carrying tactical weapons. There'll be 12, was it F-35As. Yes. They'll carry American B-61 nuclear gravity bombs capable of killing thousands. I mean, I haven't got a clue what any of that means. I'm not going to pretend. I mean, a lot of the mail, I love it. A lot of the male presenters go, yeah, of course they're carrying the F-35. They don't know what they're talking about. They really don't. But look, I'm all for us having a more reliable and deterring nuclear capability. Spending more as long as we spend it on the right thing. But the question is, I mean, that 5% that we're promising, the only country not offering it is Spain. Here's the thing, Spain, then you're not under our nuclear umbrella. Yeah. Tough, exactly. I genuinely think it's extraordinary that, you know, you don't get to play. Donald Trump was right back in, was it 2016, 2017, in his first term of office, saying everyone needs to spend more. They finally woken up to it. But it's smoke and mirrors, and we talked about that on the show yesterday. We're not really going to be spending 5%. There isn't the budget for it. It's an extra 40 billion a year. There ain't the money for that because we're busy paying 19-year-olds who can't get a bit of anxiety on a Wednesday morning to not go to work. We don't have that sort of money. So we're just going to pretend that we're spending it and pretend that we're committed to it, and then as and when we need to actually provide defence to our NATO allies, oh whoops, we're not going to have it.
But the problem also goes back to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, stating last year that they weren't going to raise the 3 main taxes on individuals for the rest of this Parliament. Yeah. Now, by boxing yourself into that, you are never going to increase the revenue coming in. So how are you going to find it?
And everyone knew it was a lie. But this is the thing, this is where no one
another-
trusts any politicians on anything because we know they're going to lie.
Yeah.
But then if you say you don't want welfare reform, but you want more spending, or you do want it, or whatever, and then but not
Where's it
enough,
going?
and you want spending, and you want this and you want that, well, then your taxes are going to have to go up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. You can't have it both ways. So don't tell politicians they have to lie to you and then go, oh, they've lied to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts also, actually, on the welfare reform. Do you support what Keir Starmer's trying to do? Does he not go far enough? Or do you support the rebel MPs? Get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Text 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. I really do want to hear from you on that. And, of course, on NATO spending. Again, it's all tied in together. We can only afford certain things if we don't spend it on other things. You know, we can't just make. Oh no, we can shake the money tree, the magic money tree. I'd love to hear from you on all of that. We're going to take your calls up next. Then we're going to be talking to former Defence Secretary Sir Malcolm Rifkin, and also going to be talking about small boat migrants working illegally as those takeaway delivery drivers to expose in the sun. We're now told there's going to be a government crackdown. They're going to arrest them. Oh, and they're going to seize their bikes, which no doubt they've already seized from other law-abiding cyclists who bought their bikes and stolen them. Is that enough of a crackdown? Really? Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The matter is that the ability and the ease with which individuals crossing the channel can then go in and work for places such as this, or car washes and other sort of improper businesses, is a huge pull factor, and it's a huge reason why we see the numbers continue to go up. I think the way we've handled this situation since 2018 by scattering these individuals around the country in hotels with no real checks to make sure that they're not doing anything improper is a huge reason why we have this problem. And instead, what we should be doing is, if an individual is coming across the channel, breaking into our country illegally,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall still here as well. Let's get to some of your phone calls. Actually, I'm trying to get some texts and tweets up. I'd love to get some of those as well. So let's go to Gary, who's on the line in Derbyshire. Gary, you want to talk about the defence spending. Gary, where are you? Good morning to you, Gary. Can you hear me? Oh, I don't think he can. All right, well, let's try another call. Let's go to is Ricky in London. And Ricky, you wanted to get in touch about the Deliveroo migrants, the ones working on Uber Eats and basically living in an asylum hotel, all paid for by you and me, having arrived here illegally, but then making a fortune working on the bikes.
Yes, Julia. Morning, Claire. Right, I've got a couple of points to make. A couple of points, right? So obviously there's a public outcry with all these migrants earning money on the black economy, right? And because of the public outcry, the government are going to have to do something, and they're going to put a stop to it. But imagine when they put a stop to it, and they're not going to earn, they're going to be on their £50 a week. Crime is going to go through the roof. Does that make sense?
Why? Why do you say that?
Because they're not earning the money on the black market.
Okay, yeah. No, that's true. They're going to make it somehow. They'll just get another job. The Turkish barbers, mind you, how many car washes does anyone need? I mean, to be honest with you.
it's going to the government are going to clamp down on it, Julia. Okay, because it's common. Not the whole country is in outrage over it. So the government, there'll come a point when the government will have to do something. There's going to have to be a massive clampdown, and all these migrants in this country, they're not going to sit around on £50 a week.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're used to having the money. But what do you think? The government crackdown, again, we were yapping on about welfare and defence, didn't get too much detail, those who haven't read The Sun today. But, you know, this big crackdown, we're told, in the wake of the Sun revelations, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, saying, look, he went along to an asylum hotel himself, went into the car park, he can actually, there's parking space, and it's just full of these Deliveroo, Uber Eats and Just Eat bikes, with all the logos on, and it's quite obvious what's going on, and he said, this is obvious, he's written, he says, look, I want the government to take action, not just against these largely young men, of course, not all women and children, as has been claimed by the government recently, but also he says he wants, he wants prosecutions of the companies. These are big companies. They know perfectly well they are allowing people to get a licence, a contract to deliver this, to take on these deliveries, and they're allowed to just subcontract it to anyone they feel like. That cannot be allowed.
Well, it's because of the soft society that we are, Julia, isn't it? We're a laughing stock around the world, aren't we? I mean, it's just crazy. It is mental. People are struggling to pay their own rent and their own bills and support their kids. And you've got these people coming over for a life of luxury, earning money.
Well, I mean, it's not a life of luxury, but it's a darn sight better than the life in their own country. But again, that's not my problem if their country's an economic basket case. It's not my problem. We can't take on, 3 billion people from the rest of the world where things aren't as good as they are here. I mean, we think it's bad here. I would rather live here than Eritrea. I mean, I can see why they want to come here, but it's not my problem. They can't be my problem.
Julia, £1,000 a week ain't a life of luxury. And I want to make another point about...
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're earning up to £1,000 a week. I know people who do some of these deliveries and things. They're not earning that sort of money.
Well, they're doing all right compared to what they're millionaires compared to the countries they're coming from.
That's
and
true.
Another thing about benefits in general, Julia. Remember the old days? I mean, the old bad back and all that. You couldn't disprove it, could you? But what we did have, we used to have investigators, people that followed them, and these people with the bad backs, they'd find them on the golf course.
Oh, yeah, people are always getting done for it. I genuinely think we need to have more of a name and shame type society on that issue. I really do think that's important. Look, Vicky, call in again. Great to talk to you. I want to squeeze in another caller before I have to go to a break at the bottom of the hour. But thank you so much. I think we've managed to get Gary back on the line. Gary's in Derbyshire and wants to talk about defence spending. Good morning to you, my lovely.
Good morning, Julia. Do you mind if I give you a new name?
Uh-oh.
The new working man's crumpet. Would you be offended by it?
I would be honoured. I didn't know we had anyone working left in the country. Thought they were on benefits.
Yeah. What I'd like to say is, could we get a discount on our 5% paying into the armament? Simply because of, if ever there's a conflict anywhere in the world, everybody's shouting, what are Britain doing about it? It's always Britain and America. When was the last time you saw a Spanish plane, Italian plane, a Brussels plane?
The French stand up some of the time, to be fair, but you're right.
Yeah.
You're right, everyone relies on us, but there is an element where America's, the police from the world, and we, of course, have this history as the greatest naval power until America came along. So we as an island nation, we do have an interest in lots, and a former colonial nation, we have a lot of interest we want to protect around the world, that we're not giving back to Mauritius,
Yeah. And then the other problem is that all the people that are displaced, they're coming here as guests. I mean, I like the people, I know a few, the Ukrainians, the Iraqis that have been displaced, and now we're keeping the migrants, feeding them, giving them jobs, a nice lifestyle. And how much more can we bear? I'm a very generous person, but there has to come a limit when you're drawing out, or the banks are taking a percentage to give to charity.
I think that's what a lot of people are feeling now. We're done now. Too much. Enough already. Gary, thank you so much for that call. 10:29 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to Sir Malcolm Rifkin, former both Foreign and Defence Secretary, to talk about that expansion of our nuclear deterrent, and that's 5% of GDP. Is it just smoke and mirrors that we are actually offering as NATO expenditure? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest. Sir Malcolm Rifkin is a former Foreign Secretary and former Defence Secretary for the Conservatives, and joins us now to talk about where we are on defence spending and the current NATO summit. A very, very good morning to you, Sir Malcolm.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for joining us. Well, first of all, what did you make of the announcement, basically at the start of the NATO summit, where Keir Starmer arrived last night, that Britain is going to buy a new squadron of fighter jets that can drop tactical nuclear weapons in the biggest expansion of the deterrent since the end of the Cold War. We're going to buy 12 F-35As. They will carry American B-61 nuclear gravity bombs capable of killing thousands, we're told. Cost £80 million each. Is that a good use of our money?
Well, I think it's probably a necessary one. We used to have tactical nuclear weapons during the Cold War, and we gave them up when it looked as if we were into a period of long-term peace. So the only nuclear weapons we have at the moment are the ones on the Trident submarines. These are called strategic weapons, and God forbid that's what you're trying to prevent a whole world war breaking out. You use them as a deterrent. Unfortunately, the Russians have very large numbers of what are called tactical nuclear weapons, much smaller than the strategic ones. They can still, they're pretty savage. They can kill, as you said, several thousands of people, but not millions.
So it's a size thing? Is it size and movability?
No. It's not just size. Unfortunately, we had just a few months ago, several times, Putin using language suggesting that if Ukraine didn't give in, or if Europe didn't stop helping Ukraine, do remember we have tactical nuclear weapons and we might just have to think of using them. Now, it may have been bluff. He stopped doing that now. But he could start doing it at any time. So we have to be sure we can't be subject to what I would call nuclear blackmail.
Yeah.
It's where a country like Russia, with these relatively small, I stress relatively, small nuclear weapons, that can kill thousands of people, says, unless you do what I demand, I'll start using them against you. So this is about deterrence, and I think it's a sensible decision.
Is it likely that this purchase of American jets, I mean, again, a lot of our nuclear capability, a lot of our military capability is quite dependent on the Americans in terms of getting permission?
Well, we could, in theory, produce these tactical weapons ourselves, but we'd have to start from scratch. It would just cost one heck of a lot more money.
And that's been one of the lessons learned, isn't it? The procurement at the MOD has been a disaster over the years in terms of, well, let's do our own special thing. That's great, except it takes a long time and it costs twice
I think,
as much.
Julia, forgive me, it's not a disaster. It's just the real world. If each country tries to, as it were, reinvent the wheel by doing it itself, it takes up a big chunk of your defense budget, or whichever budget you're referring to. So if the Americans have these tactical weapons, if they're prepared to sell them, it's pretty dumb not to take that on board.
Now, listen, you would have attended enough NATO summits in your time when you were a cabinet minister. This NATO summit is the first NATO summit of Donald Trump's second term in office. Now, he put the cat among the pigeons in his first term in office, saying, in my view, quite rightly, that, I don't know why we should provide, Article 5 guarantees to other countries that we will come to defend them if they're attacked. If you're not willing to pay your basic level of subs, spending 2% of GDP minimum on your military, lots of countries weren't even spending that. We were even on a technical basis spending it, but not in reality. I don't think veterans' pensions count as something that will actually help our military effort in the time of war. We're now talking about 5%. Everyone, I understand, apart from Spain, has signed up to this pledge. But is this pledge worth anything? If we're talking about, Keir Starmer saying 5% by 2035, only 3.5% of it's actually military, and there isn't actually the money accounting for, it's an extra 40 billion a year.
Just to put this in perspective, Putin and Russia are spending not 2% or 5%, but 7% of their GDP.
And China even more.
Quite. So this is the world we are living in at the moment. It's a very sad world that we're living in regard to these particular matters. But I think what's important, you mentioned President Trump. And of course, the problem with President Trump, and I'm not one of his great admirers, is that since he first became president, he's talked about NATO and European defense, not that he's hostile to it, but indifferent. It's not his priority. The American priority was China and so forth. Now, that looked disturbing from Europe's point of view, because ever since 1948, throughout the Cold War, America was our closest and strongest ally on these matters. What has happened most recently suggests that Trump now realizes he needs Europe as much as Europe needs him. And what we saw is that although China remains terribly important, just a few days ago, we had Trump intervening with Iran and bombing Iran. Now, he could have argued, well, what happens in the Middle East is as little importance to us as what happens in Europe. He didn't come to that view. He came to the correct judgment that we're talking about nuclear proliferation. We're talking about issues of that kind that have to be dealt with. So I think now Trump is on side. That doesn't mean he still won't be erratic. He'll still use some pretty disturbing rhetoric from time to time. But, final point on this particular question, his slogan, we have all heard it, is MAGA, Make America Great Again. Now, when you think about it, it would be pretty dumb if the President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief of NATO military forces, if you ever use them in combat, that's what makes America great. It's pure military might. So if you've got it already, if you're the most powerful military leader, and NATO is part of that leadership, you don't abandon it. Now, it's taken them a while to realize the strength of that, but better late than never.
Well, indeed, and it's interesting. He genuinely doesn't like sort of, international, pan-national bodies, whether it's G7s, NATO, World Health Organization, UN. He's not into any of them. But do you think, what do you make of the sort of, let's face it, the creepy-crawly text message that the NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte sent to President, Dear Donald, congratulations and thank you for your decisive action in Iran.
Forgive me, he actually began, Dear Mr. President, Dear Donald.
Mr. President, dear Donald, yes. Thank you for your decisive...
You combine protocol with chumminess.
Exactly. Your decisive action in Iran. That was truly extraordinary and something that no one else dared to do. It makes us all safer.
I don't think he was consulted as to whether it should be made public.
Well, I imagine he wasn't. I imagine it's rather embarrassing. But do you think that is just what let's face it, NATO leadership needs to be doing, they would have thought, hopefully in private, to basically sort of, just sort of soothe the ego of Donald Trump, because keeping Donald Trump on side with NATO, keeping him engaged in, although he seems to think there are different interpretations to the Article 5 commitment, attack on all is an attack on one is attack on all. Do you think that is just what needs to be done?
Well, 2 points. First of all, Mark Rutte, the Belgian Secretary General of NATO, whom you're referring to, he's actually been a friend of Trump's for quite a long time when he was Belgian Prime Minister.
Yeah.
They get on very, very well. And actually, that's one of the reasons he was selected as NATO Secretary General, because he does have that good relationship and can therefore say things privately to Trump that it might be more difficult for others. On the question of what's called Article 5, that is the clause, the section of the treaty which commits if any member of NATO is attacked, the rest come to its defence. That is usually quoted by people who haven't actually read Article 5. What Article 5 actually says is that if a member state is attacked, all the other member states must give consideration as to how they should respond.
Yeah.
So it doesn't tell them that they must go to war.
Right.
So that's why Trump was able to say quite correctly when he was asked about Article 5, he said, well, it has various meanings and some people think of this, some of the other.
Yes, we'll consider it, but whether I'm wondering he wouldn't come to the edge of Spain if they're not going to pay.
The political reality is that he knows as well as anybody else that if, for example, the Baltic states were attacked by Russia and Trump refused to be part of a NATO response, that would destroy NATO. Because what deterrence would NATO be for the defence of any
What do you
part
make of what Zelensky said in an interview yesterday, where he I think told Sky News, he believed that Putin would test NATO's resolve and that particular article within the next 5 years, and he would attack on a state like one of the Baltic states to see would NATO members step up and defend.
Well, yes, sure. Putin, who's a very bad guy, but he doesn't sort of suddenly declare war on NATO. He knows that if after 3 years 82% of Ukraine is still controlled by Ukraine, then if he can't conquer Ukraine in 3 years, then he's unlikely to conquer NATO.
You don't think that's an issue?
But what he will do is try and nibble away at the edges, testing, as you rightly said, whether NATO reacts to various ways in which he tries to destabilise individual NATO countries.
OK, just finally, we've got a report that states of a leaked document from the American government showing that the US military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities, called the Fordo, I keep saying Frodo, I've got the Frodo in my head, did not actually destroy the country's nuclear bomb programme, and only may have set it back not even by years, but just by months. Now, this was a classified report. It's a low confidence report. It's an initial assessment. They probably don't have the full information yet. Donald Trump has said this is fake news, this is not true, but he's claimed the nuclear capability was obliterated. This report suggests it really wasn't. What do you make of that report? And
the response is a very simple one. Neither President Trump nor the people who wrote that preliminary report actually know how much damage was done. Because unless you get down to the bottom of that very long tunnel of that mountain and then discover what's been destroyed and what hasn't been, how can you? But people are doing their best to work out what ought to have happened because of the sheer force. Remember, I'd always assumed if there was going to be an attack, it would be one bunker-busting bomb. It wasn't. It was 14 on Fordo, one after the other on the very same spot, because each one penetrates further. And it would be, I'm not an expert in these matters, but just sheer rational thinking makes one very dubious that you cannot do a lot of destruction in the middle of a mountain.
Although there's lots of concern that the enriched uranium was actually taken away.
Well, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. Once they'd enriched it, there's no reason why they should leave it there. My guess is a lot of it would have been taken out and put somewhere equally safe in some other part of Iran. Indeed. But that's a separate issue. So I think Trump is exaggerating, implying that we already know that we've totally destroyed their nuclear capabilities. He's exaggerating. But I think this preliminary report is just a bit of guesswork with a very limited knowledge that is currently available. It'll all become much clearer over the next couple of weeks.
Indeed. Very interesting to talk to you. Covered a lot of ground there. Sir Michael Rifkin, former Foreign and Defence Secretary. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pistol's been listening to all that. She's a former Conservative Special Advisor. We had, the F-bomb as well as these big bombs dropped by the American president yesterday. It is interesting about it keeping America, everyone is just going, please don't, let's Donald Trump. I mean, I thought that Mark Rutte message sounded like it'd been written by AI. How would you write a text message to the President of the United States? Jade, that has a real AI feel about it to me.
It does.
But are they just doing? And even the pledges of 5%, even if it's smoke and mirrors, they need to give Donald Trump the win. Is that what you have to do to keep Donald Trump inside NATO, inside that umbrella, and ostensibly still willing to back Europe if they were attacked by Russia?
I think it is. Just looking at the character of Donald Trump, he will change his mind rapidly. He will come out with things that you don't expect, and you don't want him to storm out of your meeting.
And they've even shown... The conversation, the NATO debate is now, the NATO summit is as short as it's ever been. I mean, like 36 hours. It's normally a few days. But also, the actual debate today is going to be, the conversation is going to be 2.5 hours long because his attention, well, I don't think his attention span does more than 30 minutes, but they basically got to keep him at the table.
They do. And that message from Mark Rutte, when it was read out yesterday, I was driving and I heard it on the radio, and it just made me laugh because it was like appeasing a child.
Oh, totally.
And it's the language that he would use.
No, I thought it was how you might talk to somebody who had taken a child, hostage, and you were just saying whatever you had to say to, and that is, and again, a lot of people say, oh, well, you said you would have voted for Trump. Yeah, I did. I still think it was the right decision. The things I disagree with him, but it doesn't mean I don't disagree with him on certain things, and I don't think he's a big man baby in lots of ways.
Precisely. I don't like the storming off the world stage and everything else, but he is doing some very good things. He's right on Iran and Israel.
He's right on Iran, right on Israel, and he was right about NATO and the spending. Yeah. But it's all smoke and mirrors. We are not going to be spending 5% by 2035. It's not a real pledge. No. It is utterly meaningless. We're not going to... But things that are not going to happen. We are not going to reform welfare. We are not going to be spending enough on defence. We are not going to be seeing... I mean, Wes Street and the Health Secretary is making a speech right now on the future of the NHS. We are not going to be halving wait lists on the NHS, OK? No. We are not going to be dealing with channel migrants, stopping the boats, smashing the gangs. We are not going to be stopping even half the delivery drivers working for Deliveroo and Uber Eats who are channel migrants from doing that job. We're not going to be getting any of that done because we don't get anything done in this country anymore. We don't do anything. No one does anything they say they're going to do. Certainly not anyone with any political authority.
And they can't
that's just how things... And no one believes a word that anyone says when they say they're going to do something.
It's because they never stick to it. The minute it becomes difficult, the minute that somebody thinks, oh, this is very unpopular, they U-turn it straight away. It doesn't matter if it's going to be good or not. They don't want to be unpopular.
Well, we'll talk more about the benefit spending and the politics of that up next. And indeed, that crackdown on migrants as well with the economics editor of The Spectator. Stay tuned, 10:46 is the time. This is Talk.
stems from the fact that I think he's handled Donald Trump rather well. I'm not talking about Lammy. Lammy is a moron and a blight upon the government, and it is shameful that he is our foreign secretary, because this is a man with the IQ of a faulty indecent fridge freezer. You know, I mean, but Starmer has has worked quite well with Trump.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to our next topic. As we touched on earlier, I'd love to hear your calls and thoughts on this as well. Keir Starmer faces a growing rebellion to his welfare reforms. Almost 130 MPs now, including 120 backbench Labour MPs, have now basically backed amendment which would completely scupper his welfare reforms in total. I want to know, do you support his reforms or do you support the rebel MPs? Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000. Well, let's talk to Michael Simmons about this. He's economics editor at The Spectator and joins us. Good morning to you, Michael.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us. Look, let's just talk about, just first of all, what does this welfare reform actually look like? What does he want to do?
So it's actually a pretty modest reform, and the idea is behind it is to get less people onto the sickness portion of universal credit and also make it harder to get the PIP payment, the personal independent payments that are meant to make it easier to live.
So will they cut anybody who's currently on it? Will people be reassessed or?
No, so there's this sort of safety net period if you're already on the payments, but then when people do come up for reassessment, which is part of the process anyway, then they could be scored differently. But again, there's a kind of transition money to stop that effect. The main portion of the cut really is about stopping younger people and also new claimants from getting these benefits.
And the idea was that 800,000 fewer people would end up on these benefits, by the end of this period. But we're told this is going to save £5 billion a year by 2030. But that doesn't mean the welfare bill is going to go down. Not only are we going to be spending obviously more on pensions, we've got an older population, but we're also going to see an extra £13 billion in total spent on the welfare bill. So it's going to go up. Just their plan is with the welfare reform, apparently massive reform, is going to go up by slightly less. So, I mean, it's not a game changer, is it? Certainly this bill, but they're playing that this is a absolutely vital key part of their plan. So many MPs have now signed up to an amendment. It's basically a wrecking amendment, isn't it? This amendment it's a reasoned amendment that basically they'll have a vote on this. If it gets selected, that this bill falls next Tuesday. But we're including these aren't just sort of, a few difficult usual suspects, are they? They include, committee chairs, people who you'd normally think would be pretty on board with what Keir Starmer wants to do, like Meg Hillier.
Yeah, exactly. So I think no Labour MP, goes into Parliament to cut benefits. And as you say, this cut is really small. Before they proposed these reforms, the sickness portion of the benefits bill was forecast to rise to 100 billion. After the cut, it's still, forecast to rise to about 100 billion. So this five billion cut, which a big chunk of it is getting to work support, is not actually, going to make a big difference here.
These are just huge sums of money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the calculation there are many Labour MPs who there are some that are just totally deluded and think we can just keep spending and spending, but there are many who recognise that we have to rein in the welfare state because it's simply unaffordable. But I think some of them have made the calculation that given this cut is going to make absolutely no difference to Britain's long-term finances, then why do something that annoys my constituents? I may as well just block it.
And makes me look cruel. And again, they're still dealing with the fallout, of course, of the winter fuel cut. Again, there was a U-turn on that, but of course that U-turn has kind of fueled these kind of backbench rebellions, hasn't it? Because MPs going, well, I know I can force the government to it wasn't the Tories that forced this, but it was backbench, it was Labour voters going, we are unhappy with this, and telling Labour MPs. But this is the thing. You say, no Labour MP gets elected wanting to do welfare cuts. I mean, they should. They're supposed to be the Labour Party, not the Welfare Party. And they should understand that it's not actually good for a young person who's left school with very few qualifications probably to sit on their backside for the rest of their life and be written off. I mean, if they actually want to take a moral stance, they should make that case. But we know that, the BBC will immediately have someone on who's in a wheelchair saying, but I can't work, isn't it terrible? They won't actually look at all the people who are perfectly sodding capable of going to work with a little bit of a nudge and a prod, and frankly, in my view, better parenting in the first place. Part of your job as a parent is to create someone with a work ethic who'll contribute, and you know, and not say, "Oh, I feel anxious today, I don't go to work or school or whatever." But they should take a more moral stance. But they want to be nice, don't they? They want to be nice. Meanwhile, our tax is going to have to go up, but everyone's pretending they won't. But we can't afford this without more taxes.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's absolutely right. And I think this is the problem. And, you know, people like myself are guilty of this, that we talk about this too much just in financial terms because that bill is so big. But really, when we're looking at doing these reforms, it shouldn't be motivated by, you know, making sure you meet your fiscal rules or getting your headroom up. It should be motivated by what you just point out, that it's not just an economic tragedy, you know, it's a human tragedy. If you're a young person and you feel too anxious to work and the state accepts that and you're signed off sick, the chances of you ever having, you know, a serious job and actually benefiting from a career are very slim. That's what we should be looking to tackle, regardless of the cost. But on the point of the cost, Paul Johnson of the IFS pointed this out yesterday. If we just keep spending and spending and spending, taxes are going to go up. Now, the view on the left of Labour, and I'm sorry to say the view in the general public, if you look at polling, is, oh, don't worry, but the rich can pay
those
this.
people. It's always those people over there, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's never themselves. And I think there's a brave position to be taken by Labour politicians who actually do believe in increasing the spending. That one of them should come out and say, look, I want to increase the size of the state because I want more benefits for everyone. Yeah. And by the way we're going to pay that is increasing income tax on, you know, low and middle income earners. But obviously that wasn't in the Labour manifesto. No one's going to say that. But unfortunately, that is where we are surely headed.
And that is where. And look, another massive big. I mean, look, there's a massive big issue in terms of Keir Starmer's authority, which is just. I mean, it's gone. It is down the toilet already. I think he's 9 days away from the anniversary of his landslide election. I mean, he's got a working majority of 156 MPs. He can't get through the most basic welfare reform. His authority is long gone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is the flaw of Keir Starmer not having, you know, an ideological standpoint for everything he does, and his only ideology being professionalism. I think if he had presented, you know, the human case that we make for why these benefits are a bad thing, then it would be easier to say to his MPs, look, this is, you know, our driving force, this is our motivation for this government, therefore you've got to back it. But when the only motivation seems to be, oh, make some numbers add up in an OBR spreadsheet, it gives a lot of license to Labour MPs to say, sorry, this is not what I thought.
Absolutely. And again, another big thing that we're spending an awful lot of money on, which people are unhappy about, is, of course, channel migrants, illegal migrants arriving in this country. The Sun has gone, you know, 2-3 days now on this story about channel migrants who basically arrive, and within hours, in some cases, they arrive, and they're put in their asylum hotel, and there they are, and they get a job, basically working for Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eats, whatever. They've got a bike, it's got, you know, got the big logo on, they're parking at the asylum hotel, everyone's pretending it's not happening, and it is on a grand scale. But of course they're not allowed to work. It's illegal for them to work. They have no right to be here, let alone work here, and therefore they're not paying tax on that salary. But what's happening is these big companies, and everyone knows they're doing it, and they're all just turning a blind eye until it's on the front page of the Sun. They basically give someone a contract, and they can subcontract to like 40 people. They can pay for, you know, 40 people's different shifts to one bank account. This is a complete and utter scam. These people are earning, we're told, you know, hundreds of pounds a week, some saying up to £1,000. I mean, they must be doing some serious shift work. But this is, you know, this is illegal working. There's now, we're told, going to be a clampdown on this. But the crackdown, interesting, is going to be, we're going to arrest those people. They're already here illegally. And we can't deport them. We know that. We never do. And we're going to confiscate their bikes. They probably stole their bikes in the first place. Where did they get the money from to buy the bike? You know, they were destitute, weren't they not, when they came here? I mean, this is how unserious this government is now.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a really interesting one. I must confess, I'm a regular purchaser of Uber Eats and Deliveroo, and you notice it yourself that it tells you the name and the photo of the person who's going to be delivering your takeaway, and very often that is not the person that turns up, and it's because, you know, they buy these accounts. And I think the problem needs to be stopped at source, right? I think in a way, even though this work is illegal, I would rather that the people who are in these asylum hotels were doing something like semi-productive than something like more criminal.
I'd rather they just weren't here.
Well, exactly.
If they're allowed to work here, that'll be yet another pull factor.
Yeah, I just think, given the ones that are here, they could be doing worse things. But I think you're completely right that they shouldn't be here in the first place. That's the problem that needs to be solved. All these things are kind of downstream of that, so they can say they're going to crack down on them, arrest them, but as you say, they're already in these hotels. They're already not meant to be here.
Exactly. Michael Simmons, economics editor of The Spectator, thank you very much indeed. Claire Pearsall, come in on any on that.
I think that Michael raises a really valid point, is that the government are looking to do this purely for a fiscal benefit when you're looking at welfare reform, rather than looking at why it's better.
I don't know what fiscal means, for God's sake. I mean, exactly, it doesn't even mean... It's not what... It doesn't mean anything to most people.
No, it doesn't. Most people just want those to be out at work when they can, and that's what we should be looking at. The benefits of being in work, getting up on time, striving for something.
Absolutely, and raising your kids to do the same thing, by the way. It's part of your job. If you don't want to do that, don't have kids. I want everyone to have... We need to have more kids, but seriously, we need to start talking about this as a massive issue. If your kid is not going to work, sorry, that's down to you. I'm sorry. Let's talk about more of this coming up. This is Talk. They are the home of common sense.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable tank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Just approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and with you, of course, listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Don't forget, of course, you can go and look at us on our YouTube page, talkTV. Also, I've got my own YouTube page, very exciting. It's called The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, so you can find it very easily. You have no excuses. And you can hit subscribe, and then you'll never miss a thing. Now, coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about where we are with that NATO summit. That that 5% of GDP, and the Prime Minister saying we can no longer take peace for granted, announcing the expansion of the nuclear deterrence with tactical nuclear weapons on American jets. 80 million quid a go, those jets. A bargain, everybody, a bargain. I mean, it is compared to most of the things we spend our money on. But also, we're going to be talking about those Iranian nuclear facilities that were obliterated by those bunker buster bombs, which Donald Trump announced the other day. It turns out, according to an initial assessment, a report within the American government, which has been leaked. Again, it was confidential, highly confidential, it's classified information, so not quite sure who's leaking that. It says actually they weren't destroyed, and it was probably only just put back by about a few months rather than even years. Plus, Home Secretary Chris Philp has said there is clear evidence that asylum seekers are taking jobs with takeaway delivery companies like Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats. The Home Office has vowed now to target the racket, claiming migrants working illegally as food delivery riders from asylum hotels will now be arrested and have their bikes seized. It's called a major crackdown. This comes after The Sun exposed this on their front page. Is that a major crackdown? And isn't the issue that we need to tackle the companies who have systems for people to basically do this illegal work? If those fines were really, really, really big, I have a funny feeling they would stop hiring those people. Anyway, we're going to talk about more on that. We're going to talk more about benefits and also going to be talking a little bit about the Climate Change Committee report. You know it's one of my favourite topics, talking about climate change. That isn't a problem. Coming up, all that chat with Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Special Advisor. Very, very, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you once again for joining us. Look, we're going to talk about a bit Israel, Iran, and the F-bomb being dropped along with the bunker-busting bombs by Donald Trump. They don't know what they're effing doing, he said about them. We're going to talk to the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy Fleur Hassan Nahum a little bit later in the show. But this NATO summit, the focus is very much on how much is being spent, what's been going on in the Middle East. That has taken an awful lot of attention away from Ukraine. But we know that Zelensky was there. Yeah. He's certainly hoping, he said, to meet with Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, yeah, they may see each other. But I mean, we're now told that in the reports here that the UK must prepare now for a wartime scenario. Our promise to spend 5% of GDP on defence by 2035, although only 3.5% of that is actually on core spending, i.e. actual defence. Is that enough? Is that serious? Or is that, as many are saying, smoke and mirrors?
Well, I think it is smoke and mirrors. And when you look at the strategic spending review that we had only a couple of weeks ago, it fell apart in the details stage. When you start looking at what it is they actually want to spend on proper stuff, that's the technical term for it, it's very little. And I think that we need as a nation to actually take this much more seriously than we have done, and the Conservatives are equally as culpable for this. We need to put more money into defence spending, we need to put more into personnel and how we keep them and make sure they're equipped fully. And we don't do it, and we should have done, and this is a abject lesson to everybody that you still need to have boots on the ground occasionally.
Well, exactly. We're always preparing and kitting up for the last war we fought. No, maybe it's not going to be in a desert. Who knew? Yeah. I mean, but this is the thing. No one wants to spend money on tanks or jets we may not use when we need to spend money on nurses, on teachers, on rebuilding roads and nuclear power stations. People want, I mean, especially politicians, they want to do stuff that's going to be showing up clearly in front of people in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Oh, look, there's a general election coming up by 2029. Now, that's why we've had this abject failure across governments, and it's all governments, and it happened before Tony Blair and after Tony Blair and massively under Cameron and Osborne and others, that we just do not do any long-term investment and spending. I mean, and I do think we do need to separate investment and spending, day-to-day spending. That said, you still, I mean, you know, you can invest in building a new conservatory, guys, but you still have to have the money to do it. And it's still raised by the same way, which is either borrowing or taxes. And borrowing, by the way, is just taxes in the future. So we need to get to grips with, if we want something, we have to pay for it. This ties in massively with the conversation we're having about welfare. Keir Starmer's total inability would appear to have any control over his troops at home in the House of Commons, with over 120 Labour MPs, 130 MPs in total, basically signing the so-called reasoned amendment to basically block the government's plan for welfare reform, which is a drop in the ocean of the welfare bill. Like just £5 billion pounds a year would be saved by 2030. I mean, they're not even going to, I mean, the welfare bill's going to still go up, and it's still going to be a load of people of working age who are, most of us would think are perfectly capable of working physically or mentally, being able to go on sickness benefits, disability benefits that we all pay for as our taxes go up. We don't have enough money for virtually anything that we're doing. In fact, virtually everything we're doing is on the never anyway. Yeah. We need to kind of square the circle, and I wonder how much like defence spending and how much welfare spending and NHS spending, whatever it is, immigration spending, all of that. We need to have a more sensible national conversation about this, where we don't play along with the lunatic lies that all parties tell us that they're, even reform. And I do like reform. I like a lot of their ideas. But when they say, oh, we're going to discharge non-doms 250k to stay here, and then they won't face extra tax. Rubbish. That's nonsense. And we'd actually lose a huge amount of money from it. Everyone's talking nonsense numbers, and they're not being honest with the electorate. And so the voters will vote for the party that says you can have everything you want, but we won't put your theirs, but won't put your taxes up. It is not possible to do any or all of these things without spending more money. Where is that money coming from?
Well, that is the big question, and I think successive governments, you're right, will only ever plan for the 5 years they're going to be in Parliament, and that's what they look for. They're always working up to the next election, and anything that increases a tax burden to an individual, politicians shy away from. But we've got to the point where we can't afford the NHS system, the education system, the defence system, and all of the other things that we take for granted. So where's the money coming from? It's got to come from us. But of course, if you're going to increase people's taxes or monies that they see go out of their pocket, they want to see something physical in return.
And also, crucially, if we're going to pay a load of taxes, we'd like things to work.
We would.
So people don't want to feel like, oh God, I'm going to have to send my kid to a private school. I mean, God, I didn't choose to send my kid to a private school. I just looked at the local private school. I mean, basically like, oh, let's have metal detectors entering. I mean, two of the local schools. Jihadi John went to one of them. Okay.
It says everything.
I mean, one of them, they got metal detectors. Kids were stabbed. I mean, I'm sorry. Sorry if I don't want to. I mean, sorry if I'd rather work harder and pay more of my own money to send my kid to a school where she won't get stabbed. I call me old-fashioned. Now, a lot of people aren't privileged enough to be able to do that because it's very expensive. But or having a family member who has to wait for a scan of some sort when they're worried about cancer, and people being able, the family being able to help them out and paying. But people are feeling like I'm paying a load of money and I'm not getting anything for it, and I'm seeing all of those people getting stuff. Whether it's someone who's swinging the lead on benefits, and yes, it is on the grand scale. We do not have more sick and disabled people than any other Western country, which is what our welfare statistics tell us. 1,000 more people a day signing up to sickness and disability benefits. A day. It's mad. It's unsustainable. And we've got a whole load of Labour MPs who will not wake up to that. We've got a whole load of, frankly, Tories who don't wake up to that because they allowed it to happen on their watch. We need a reckoning. We need a full wake-up call, like, we need to spend money on defence. We're going to have to free up that money. We are going to have to start paying more of our taxes towards the stuff that we really do need, which we may not need to use, but you only don't need to use it because you've got it.
Yes.
I mean, there's all these, but I just think we've got such a muddled... People who run government the last 34 years are muddleheads, and they don't think things through. They don't spend money on the big stuff like building reservoirs and nuclear power stations and gas power stations and building up our military so we can deter attacks and be a serious, have a serious say in the world. We don't do any of the sensible stuff, but we, again, spaff money up the wall on stuff that we shouldn't spaff money on the wall.
We do, and I think people would understand it. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take a major event for people to understand the defence threat against us. And we've seen it before when we've had attacks in this country. As horrendous as they are, everybody comes together and everybody says, what can we do to support our armed forces personnel? What can we do as a nation? And everybody comes together, and that's fantastic. But it takes a really big event for that to happen. I think if people saw that their roads were fixed, their trains ran on time, they could get a bus when they wanted to, They might be
or they could
slightly
afford
better.
to get a train.
Yeah, they might
Well,
be
afford to develop
slightly
the
more
car.
open about it.
Yeah, I do. Well, it's very interesting. And you know, Scandinavian countries, they pay way higher taxes, but they don't complain about it because they've got very, very good public services.
Yeah, they do. You can get your kid into a nursery. You can have a school that your child doesn't get stamped out. And the education's
that's
good.
why people start getting resentful of things like the channel migrants, who, you know, the amount of money, the billions we're spending. I mean, it is billions and billions on housing people who have no right to be here, who will probably never be deported, who have no, I mean, who just no claim to be in this country, and who we're going to be stuck with. And by definition already illegal. They committed a crime in entering this country illegally. They paid people smugglers. God knows where they're from. As we're already seeing, the creeping up in the crime statistics, violent crimes, sex assaults from people who have arrived in this country from very different cultures, and particularly bad when it comes from illegal migrants. Certain countries we are seeing a massive spike in terms of the chances of them committing serious crimes. Again, wake-up call. Oh, but you're all bigoted and awful if you say it. But, you know, but also the illegal working. So, front page of the Sun newspaper all this week about these small boat migrants, channel migrants. They're in asylum hotels. They've got their accommodation paid for by us. Yeah. Not through choice, but by us. And in the car park at these asylum hotels, there are all the bikes with the Uber Eats boxes and the Deliveroo boxes, on the back of the bikes and the Deliveroo, whatever. And there they are, because they're all working. And the way they're able to do this is these big companies, they do lots of checks. They do lots of checks on someone getting a contract, and that person has to prove they can work. They've got their passport or their visa, and they sign those documents, lovely. And then they're allowed to subcontract out. Yeah. And so they're paying for literally a bank account. 40 different people could be on that same account effectively, riding around, taking those orders. They know it's happening. They allow it to happen. They're not making any checks. You have a legal duty as an employer to check that the person who's working for you is legally allowed to do so. God, when I first hired a nanny, I was political editor of a national newspaper, best candidate. Oh my God, she was off the scale, amazing. And I said, I'm going to need to see a copy of your passport to I could know that you're in the EU. And then she admitted that she wasn't from the country, from the EU, that she said she was. Well, as it was, an Irish nanny. Hope that's okay with everybody. But I said, I can't employ you. You're illegal. You shouldn't be working. No one should be employing you here. You haven't got a right to work here. But these guys, they are making, we're told, serious money. But this is the crackdown the government has announced. The crackdown is only after the Sun put it on the front page, even though they must have known it was happening. B, it's they're going to arrest those delivery drivers. Oh, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with them? Do you think they'll go to court before they're going to be deported? And what's going to happen to them? And then they're going to seize their bikes. Do you think they bought their bikes? Really?
No, and what they actually need to do is go after the employer, and there should be a severe penalty for the employer.
50 grand per employee. Oh, yeah. Easy. Minimum first time, doubles the second time.
Otherwise, they lose their trading licence.
Yep. But it's really simple. It's the same thing with the vapes. Remember, we've discussed so many times, like the vape. Oh, what do we do about the vapes? Well, they're selling them to underage kids. Well, they're not allowed to.
Exactly.
So every pub I ever worked in, the landlords would just do not serve them alcohol. Yeah, I'm going to lose my sodding licence. Exactly. They are absolutely proud. Now, I know, having had a teenager, I'm sure you have a teenager as well, there are apparently pubs that are remarkably relaxed. But anyway, show us some fake ID that we know is fake, but we'll all play along. We think we've covered ourselves. But this is really simple stuff. Yeah. They shouldn't allow anyone to subcontract their licence. If they're caught doing it, they need to be, checking they're not doing it. Also, if you're paying someone the equivalent of 40 different delivery riders money a month, I think you know what you're doing.
You do, and I've obviously worked at the Home Office where we did enforcement raids on restaurants.
It's like two a month, the whole country.
On restaurants that were employing illegal workers. And we used to have a scheme where it wasn't very much. I think it was like a £2,000 fine or something like that, which was no deterrent.
And what are the chances of getting caught?
We upped it to 20,000 and then 50,000. Yeah. And strangely, those levels of crime went down. It did, yeah. There were still some that were not paying attention.
But for every crime, whether it's shoplifting, whether it's burglary, whether it's employing illegal workers, any deterrent is only there if people think there's a high chance that they are going to get caught.
Exactly.
That's why when you know there's a speed camera, you make sure you're at that right speed because you think you're going to get caught.
Yes, because clearly you never speed at any other time, and we use the road.
Why would anyone do that? Oh yes, I have to drive at 19 miles per hour on a major road near my home.
With no one
it's
on it.
Madness, absolute madness. At 3 in the morning. Let's also talk about the climate change report.
Yes.
Climate Change Committee is an independent committee. It's people appointed the great and the good who have no more qualification, most of them, in climate science than I have. Yeah. And I have none. I have the same qualification in climate science that the Environment Secretary has, well, the Energy Secretary has, in charge of all this stuff. Wonderfully. I mean, it's just wonderful, this report, because it basically says, oh, there are more people than ever with the electric vehicles and more people than ever getting these awful heat pumps. And, of course, it's gone up by a tiny amount. People are not buying these things because they're bloody awful and they're overpriced. And they don't want to use them. But what they have said to the government, the Climate Change Committee, is they need to lower electricity prices because it's too expensive for people to run an electric vehicle. Also, this whole point, it's got no resale value. And it's too expensive for people to run heat pumps. So they're getting a heat pump. It costs much more. But because electricity prices are higher than gas prices, it's a problem. But given that the Climate Change Committee is pushing net zero policies, and net zero policies push up electricity prices, they're now telling the government to cut electricity prices. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up.
I mean, we've had these conversations so many times, and this is just so utterly ridiculous. Added to that, the Resolution Foundation have put out a report.
And they're a sort of left-wing think tank, aren't they?
They are.
They were previously run by someone who is now a Labour minister.
But they are suggesting that EV users, so anybody with an electric car, is actually going to be draining more out of the grid. So even if you reduce the price, you're going to push it up for other people. So if you're living in your 6-bed mansion and you've got your electric car on charge outside, somebody in a 1-bedroom flat down the road, their electricity price is going to be higher because of the demand that is needed. Everyone's switching their kettles on and they're putting their TVs on, so there's a price surge. So the person is funding it is that person in a 1-bedroom flat who cannot afford an EV, even if they wanted one, or a car themselves, funding the lifestyle for those.
But I've never understood why people who can afford an electric vehicle, by definition, a more expensive car. Most people I know who've got them, it's their second car. We do not have a second car, barely use the first one. But they get discounted rates on electricity, so they're saying they should put it up.
I want a discounted rate. Why can't I? I don't have an electric car, but I'm not at home the majority of the day because I'm at work. So why can't I have a discount?
You do, because you don't have to pay for electricity. And we're providing you with aircon right now. Stop moaning.
I love it.
she only came in for the air conditioning, honestly. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of the topics we are talking about. In particular, Keir Starmer's growing rebellion on to his welfare reforms. 120 backbench MPs are actually basically saying they're going to vote this down. Do you support his reforms? Do you support the rebel MPs? Is this part of just a whole... We have no joined-up thinking in our governance, and it's not just the Labour Party, but, my God, we certainly have no authority for this Prime Minister. I know he loves prancing around on the world stage, looking very important, although when he stands at the back of the official photo at NATO, you think you haven't got the gumption, the sense to get to the front when you're a serious player. But genuinely, we are in a mad state of affairs where we need to spend huge more amounts on military. We haven't got that money because we're spending a fortune on welfare and on paying off the debts from lockdown, which, by the way, this government supported even more than the last government. We are in a whole heap of trouble. So are a lot of other countries as well. But when you're facing the threats from countries like Russia, like China, like Iran, maybe we need to have a little bit of a wake-up call, and perhaps we need more, should we say, serious politicians to actually deal with this. Politicians who, within a year of being elected with a landslide victory, as Keir Starmer has, who can get the most minor piece of welfare reform through the Parliament. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. We'll get your calls up next. It's 11:22. This is Talk.
We had single days where there were 12,000 illegal border encounters. 12,000 people who weren't supposed to be here. In the entire month of May, we had zero. No new law. No new like spending in the sense of like we didn't, like new mass. I'm sure they moved some money around, you know what I mean? But just using the people we have and the border and the laws we have just by enforcing the law. That's all we did.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:24 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get some of your messages coming in particular on welfare reform. Do you support Keir Starmer's reforms, or do you support the Rebel MPs who are basically going to block them if he does go ahead with that vote next Tuesday? Gemma says MPs are rebelling because it's now dawned on them that Starmer is not the full shilling. Richard said Starmer is going to do another U-turn. Yeah, that's what I think. Jerry says, I support the rebelling MPs as this is not a Labour government, it's a neoliberal Tory government, which is weird because we basically had a Labour-like government for the last 14 years under the Tories. Michael says, I don't support the reforms as it discriminates against folk who've had to go through extensive testing down the years. These drastic cuts across the board will leave over 1 million sick and disabled people totally destitute. OK. All right, it doesn't discriminate. I mean, you're supposed to discriminate against people who don't need it. People have gone through testing, but just because someone, OK, if you've got a disability that's obviously lifelong, that's different from someone who, people are reassessed, I think, roughly every 3 years. It should be more often, but it's now every 3 years. I don't know why people think people shouldn't be asked questions and have to prove their disability. But what we're finding is that all these things are now on Zoom and people just say, oh, I felt suicidal on Monday. Oh, automatically you're on benefits, no one's ever questioned them, and off you go. They're not drastic cuts, mate. They really aren't. Simon says, Starmer's backbenchers finally see what an inept Prime Minister we have. He's about as much use as a chocolate teapot in a heat wave. And Mark says, we can't carry on with an ever-increasing welfare bill, that's for sure. Well, let's talk to Darren, who's on the line in Hampshire about this. He's called in on 0344 499 1000. Darren, what do you want to say? Good morning.
Morning. I just want to say I'm shocked at Keir Starmer. Honestly, it's unbelievable how the British public put this man where he is today. And there's a reason why he was on the back row of that picture taken in...
Oh, the NATO set-piece picture.
Because he doesn't deserve to be on the front representing Britain.
No, but Britain does. Britain should be in the front row. So he's representing Britain at that point. Why do you think he's not working out as a sort of authoritative PM?
He's constantly U-turning on everything. Everything he's said, everything he's wanted to do, he hasn't done any of it. He's not got...
he's not got a spine. I don't think he's got a spine. Do you think he believes in anything?
No, I don't think he does. I don't think he believes in what he even says himself. I mean, where's all this money coming from to buy these extra jets from the United States? That's coming from the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Where's the money coming from to anything he wants to do? It comes out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Yeah.
I work 80 hours a week. I graft 5 days a week.
What do you do?
My wife grafts. I'm a delivery driver.
Yep.
I'm out on the road every day grafting. Half of my money goes lining that guy's pocket who doesn't put anything back.
Yeah.
He can't put anything back because he doesn't know how to. I get so angry about this guy. I'm an ex-forces veteran.
Yeah.
I worked hard and I work hard now. And for the last 3 days, all I've heard is stuff on the radio about him. And I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed to be even British. I am, honestly.
Oh, I mean, I would never be ashamed to be British. I could be ashamed of my government, but I'm never going to be ashamed to be British.
Well, you know what? Well,
yeah, I know what you mean. Can I ask? You say you work as a delivery driver. What do you make of this Sun expose and Shadow Home Secretary talking about it, and the government said they're finally going to act on these? These aren't delivery drivers, delivery riders. These channel migrants who come over here within hours of getting jobs, effectively working completely illegally. doing these deliveries. What do you make of that then?
I think it's a shambles. I think it's an absolute shambles that they come into this country illegally, right, through whatever means they want to make up in their head. They get everything given to them. I have to work to put a roof over my head. I have to work to put food on my kids' tables, clothes on the back. And I work hard. And yet they can go out, jump on the bandwagon of someone what's got an account, deliver food to vulnerable people, and just get away with it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest worries. Yeah, that's one of the biggest worries to me. If
zero.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he's still where he is today. He's not got the balls to come back and face PM questions for the second week running. He puts his...
I mean, he doesn't... OK, in his defence, he doesn't arrange the timing of the NATO summit, but it's quite useful and convenient for him, isn't it?
He doesn't arrange the timings, but he knows when PM queues are. You know, and this is the second one he's missed now. Yeah. She took a grilling last
Angela Rayner,
she's about to take another grilling this week.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. There's a reason why 120 of his own party are voting against him.
Yeah.
In something which he will U-turn on, because that's what Labour do. They U-turn on everything. You know, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, I think we can feel the anger. I think and I think a lot of people share it, Darren. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Melvin, who's on the line. He's in Enfield. And Melvin, you want to talk about defence spending, don't you?
Yes, Julia. I very rarely disagree with you, but I've got to disagree with something you said earlier. You said you don't think Labour will spend 5% of GDP on defence. I reckon in a few years' time they could easily do it, because GDP would be so low, it'd be lower than the figure in real terms that we're spending now.
Oh, you got me there. You're right. No, I think you'll find if you check the Labour manifesto more clearly, Melvin, we're going to have 2.5% growth every year and we'll be booming. Did you not get that memo?
That was in the small print, surely.
Soz. I'm sorry about that. No, you're right. I mean, exactly. I mean, by the way, at that point, 5% of GDP, you say like we'll just buy like one sort of like water gun and water pistol and hope that'll work dealing with Russia.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, so what do you make then? Should we be spending more? Do you think that's all smoke and mirrors? That 5%? What do you think about these £80 million jets? Should we be buying those from the Yanks?
Well, there's no end date of when it's going to be done.
Yeah.
It's give me an end date. Then, well, not even if they do give an end date, Julia, it doesn't mean they're going to do it anyway.
No.
Just give something to look forward to. They're not even doing that. That mirrors, it's like a cloth over it. It's not even mirrors, not even dark mirrors.
They're not even kind of pretending, are they? Yeah, exactly. I don't know how often, if you pledge to do something, it's kind of useful if you know you've got the money to do it, or you can at least tell us where you're going to get it from. Otherwise, it's a bit meaningless.
Absolutely, like everything else with this government. I mean, in all the years, I've voted, and I've looked at politics from different angles. This is not just because it's happening now. This is the worst. And whether I vote Conservative or Labour or whatever, the other side, I might think they're clueless. I might think they're this, that, or the other. But this one, I'm even getting to the point, I hate to say it, but I think, they're evil in some respects.
Evil? God, I don't think I'd go that far. I'd just say they're a shambles, but there we are. But strong words. A lot of people are not happy. Melvin, thank you very much indeed for that. Brief reaction to that from Claire Pearson. I mean, you worked as Special Advisor for the last lot, but I mean, people are really angry.
I don't think I've felt this level of anger for some time. I think we did have it under the Tory government, but it was in pockets at certain things. This just feels like any time they're on the television or on the radio, people are just angry with them. They don't have to say anything in particular. People just dislike it. And that's trust in politics that's gone out the window.
This honeymoon. I mean, this is literally someone, literally throwing the ring in your face at the altar levels of honeymoon ending early. 11:32 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to the Israeli Foreign Ministry's special envoy. That's Fleur Hassan-Nahum. We're also going to talk to the Sun reporter Thomas Godfrey, who broke that story, of course, about the Channel migrants. And does he think that the government is taking enough action with their strong crackdown on these people working illegally after arriving here illegally, and we're paying their bill for their hotels? That's all coming up. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:34 is the time. I promise we're going to get to more of your calls coming in thick and fast. I have to say, Darren and Melvin, I mean, the anger and the despair, the combination of the two is palpable. It's palpable how people feel just the utter incompetence of this government and just everything about them and every decision, the decisions, the U-turns, everything's just as bad. Feel free to we will ask you about welfare, but, you know, feel free to chime in on all of this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Also your thoughts on the NATO summit, defence spending, and also indeed on Donald Trump's insistence that a new report that was leaked, an assessment of what happened with those bunker busting bombs in the 3 Iranian nuclear sites, that they did not actually achieve what he claimed. He claimed that those nuclear capability in Iran was obliterated by those strikes over the weekend. This initial assessment, leaked classified document from the White House, suggests that actually they may have only put back the Iranian nuclear program, not by years, but only by months. Well, let's talk about this with Fleur Hassan-Nahum. She's Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy and a former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, and joins us now. Very good morning, Chief Fleur.
Hi, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Donald Trump says that nuclear program in Iran was obliterated by those bunker busting bombs. The report says that they weren't. He says that's all fake news. That's a lie. That's been done. What's the Israeli government's assessment?
Well, the Israeli government is still assessing, which I think is a smart thing to do. We're talking about a very complicated nuclear facility dug deep into a mountain, reinforced with some special concrete. And ultimately, we're not rushing and grandstanding. We're trying to actually scientifically assess what was done. But let me tell you what Israel did, which then America complemented. Israel managed to assassinate all of the scientists that enrich uranium. It hit some other nuclear facilities, because unfortunately there's not just one. And then we needed the United States with those bunker busting bombs to create damage to that installation that is deep in the ground. So either way you look at it, they've been set back very significantly, and it'll take a while. And honestly, Julia, I'm hoping that with all of this ceasefire, and last night we all had the first night's sleep.
I was going to ask you about that.
In weeks, the first night's sleep. But I have to tell you that we need an agreement for the Islamic Republic of Iran to say no more enrichment, because they don't just risk our lives here in Israel, they risk the entire region and the world. If these people, these are apocalyptic jihadists, which means that the doctrine of mutual deterrence doesn't exist with them, because they're quite happy to sacrifice their lives for the next life and everything waiting for them there. And so you're not dealing with rational people. And this is why we couldn't wait one more week.
Listen, I have no issue whatsoever with backing your attacks and Israeli attacks on Iran as a defensive measure. Absolutely justified, no question at all, in the wake of them funding Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi rebels and their own attacks, and indeed terror plots here, the threat to the Middle East. I've got no issue with that. Our own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, there, our own Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, completely dodged those questions. I mean, even again today, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, completely dodging the question about whether or not it was the right thing to do and whether it was the legal thing to do. What have you made of that?
I think that Winston Churchill would be rolling in his grave to see that Britain, the country that saved the world in the 30s and 40s, the country that stood up against the most evil dictator, now can't even decide whether the Allies and the only democracy in the Middle East, which side they're on. They are what? Siding with Islamic terrorists who have killed British servicemen and women, American servicemen and women, French servicemen and women, and of course, many, many Jews. And if they can't now be so clear or morally clear about who the good guys and the bad guys are, I think you guys are in trouble.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I found it utterly bewildering, I have to say. What did you also make of Donald Trump and what he had to say yesterday, including dropping not just a bunker-busting bomb, but the F-bomb? Let's have a little watch and a listen.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
It's pretty unusual for a major political leader to use such language in public. It sounded pretty frustrated, Fleur, but not just the Iranians, but the Israelis as well. Do you know what the F you're doing?
I think we do, because if we didn't, then the Iranians would have had a nuclear bomb 10 years ago. And what nobody sees is all of the different intelligence missions by the Mossad to push back again their development of weapons-grade uranium. What you see at the end of it is the point that we couldn't push back anymore without causing considerable damage. Look, I understand President Trump is frustrated with what's going on. He's a businessman, and he just sees things as more transactional. Unfortunately, like I said, when you have an apocalyptic, genocidal Islamist regime, there's no logic to any of it. They actually not just broke the ceasefire in the first 2 hours. That morning, yesterday morning, they killed 4 innocent people, including two 18-year-old kids.
It does appear, though, that it is holding now. We know many ceasefires. It was very much poo-pooed by many of the commentators and military people here, but actually it is the norm, actually, that most ceasefires do see points where it is broken in the early days.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, Julia, I think that Netanyahu and Trump pulled off a real kind of sleight of hand here last month when the media was announcing that there was a rift and there were, words between them and all this. And in the end, it wasn't true at all. It was all a sleight of hand in order to trick the Iranians, and it worked.
Let me read you a report that's on the BBC in the last 24 hours. At least 46 people waiting for aid have been killed by Israeli fire in 2 incidents in central and southern Gaza, according to rescuers and hospitals. UN agencies have condemned the US and Israel-backed food distribution system, with one official calling it an abomination and a death trap. And they say that the UN said that more than 410 Palestinians are reported to have been killed by Israeli gunfire or shelling since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began work in late May. I've seen reports where from the BBC where people are quoted as saying it's like the Hunger Games for Palestinians who are forced to go and get aid, walking often long distances, and then apparently, according to these reports, facing gunfire from Israeli Defense Force soldiers, men, women, innocent children being killed, taken to hospital. Reports coming out from not just the Hamas-run health ministry, but also Western medics working in hospitals, and from, we're told, onlookers. What's your response to that report?
I had £1 for every time the BBC got something wrong with this conflict and blamed Israel unjustifiably, to then have a weak apology. Oh, sorry, we didn't mean this, or yes, we should have verified. Then I'd be rich by now. What I can tell you, Julia, is that the only people killing Gazans going to get the food are Hamas. And you know why? Because they're getting desperate as they lose control of the grip they have as the ruling party, as the ruling governing body of Gaza. We saw it 2 weeks ago when they killed 9 aid workers. Let me tell you, Julia, I sat down with the people running this humanitarian foundation. They are feeding people like no other month. These months, they've distributed something like 33 million meals, which is way more than Hamas actually allowed the innocent people of Gaza to keep. They were stealing the aid, and with that, they were funding the offense against Israel. And this is why we had to find an alternative. And the problem is that the only information coming out is either from the Gaza Health Ministry or Al Jazeera, Goebbels TV, and the UN, which gets it the same information and the same numbers from the same sources. So there's a recycling of the same source. And by the time it gets to the second or third party in the UN, they present it as something legitimate when it isn't. And that's the problem. But you could already begin to see the Gazans coming out against Hamas because they've been empowered by
But
this.
it is interesting. We had Colonel Richard Kemp, a former British commander of British forces in Afghanistan. He was on the show yesterday, and he was saying he'd been out with the humanitarian aid body, and he'd spoken to lots of people individually, and he said no one had any concerns about the IDF shooting at them. Their concerns were about Hamas, and he said people did not appear to be remotely starving or desperate, as we're seeing. And this is the thing. I hear reports every day on the BBC and other media in this country, and I know because I talk to friends who are otherwise good, sensible, wise people who believe every single word, and they believe this is happening. This is now common knowledge in this country. The perceived view is that people are physically starving and emaciated. They're being starved in a famine, in a mass genocide in Gaza. And when the IDF soldiers are guarding those who are bringing this aid, they are shooting them, massacring them. What I find really strange, and I've raised this before, is that we see video footage coming out of Gaza all the time. I mean, 1.5 million mobile phones in Gaza. I've yet to see a single bit of footage, one little bit. I scour social media, one single bit of footage, including on the BBC, which claims these things are happening as fact, of these actual massacres. And yet, and they're reporting it back. But
they're lies.
But what is Israel going to do about that? Because when the world and when the commentariat and when the journalists and when the politicians and the voters in the Western world all think that this is what you are doing, and yes, I'm sure there are civilians who are shot and there are some rogue IDF soldiers along the way, no government, no military action is ever perfect. But if they think this is deliberate policy and this is happening on a mass scale, which is what is being reported every day, this damages Israel.
It's already damaged Israel. And yes, you can talk about double standards in the media, and you can talk about the fact that, conflicts, which are much worse than this, are not reported at all. And the other day, 50 Christians were butchered in Egypt, not a peep from anyone. There is definitely double standards against Israel. But Julia, on this point, I'm going to look in the mirror and say something which I have a bellyache about, and is the fact that Israel does not take the media war seriously enough. This is what I fight for in this country internally as a politician.
It's a propaganda war that you're losing.
I fight for the fact that we need to do something about it. We need to have a strategy, because all the misinformation is delegitimizing our country, people, and our cause.
And this is it. I'm not putting the Israeli case. I just want to only discuss facts, because I think that's what matters on the ground. Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Claire Pissell, I mean, just on that side of things, I know Gaza's out of the news quite a lot at the moment, but again, this morning I heard a report on the BBC. I do it just to torture myself. I do it again. Do you know what I do? I had to know how not to do it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to talk later in the show about the BBC being told in editorial guidelines, you have to really be willing to report on things that you disagree with. No, really? I mean, wow, what a mind-blowing thing. You're a journalist paid for by taxpayers and you have to be told that? I mean, good grief. But this is a really big issue. They are reporting stuff. I was a news reporter, long time before I gave my opinion. You have to report who did what, when, where and why. You need to report facts. You can't just say, oh, well, some guy who's taken hostages and tortured and raped people, but he says this has happened. I mean, really, is this person a reliable source? You haven't got a video of it, but there were thousands of people there. Not one person got their mobile phone out. Not one.
And that's the thing, because surely you're supposed to also double source this. I've learnt this from the husband in the world of newspapers. As the same as you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that backup, then why are you going to take one person's opinion on what they have seen as the gospel truth, and that's what you're going to put on your homepage of your
especially when we're paying for you.
Precisely.
Exactly. Right, up next, we're going to be talking to the reporter of The Sun who broke that amazing story, and it absolutely shocking. Migrants, channel migrants, coming over on boats within a few hours, some of them, and an awful lot of them in total after a few days, getting jobs as delivery riders. Your Uber Eats, your Deliveroo, odds are it's being delivered by a legal channel migrant working illegally. Now the government said they're going to crack down on this. Do we trust them? That's up next. This is Talk.
many of the migrants that come here, they're coming here, they're fleeing countries that we've wandered into, whether it be Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, even Iran now as well. We've bombed the hell out of Iran, but there's no follow-up plan.
Well, yeah,
to
but,
take
haven't
Iran
yeah, but we
into
haven't
a better
bombed. Yeah, hang on, Tobias, hang on. We haven't bombed the hell out of Iran at all. You know, as the government will tell you, nothing to do with us. We didn't do anything to do with the bombing of
what
Iran.
What I'm saying is from a Western perspective, then that's what's happened.
Yeah, but they're not fleeing. They're not fleeing Iran because we bombed it. Is my point.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Claire Pearcell is here, but we shuffled her over to squeeze in Thomas Free, who's a reporter at The Sun, who broke this story. It's been on the front page all week at The Sun about these Deliveroo, Uber Eats and all the other riders who arrive here, you know, to work. And isn't that great? Oh, no, it's not quite such a good news story. It's people who've arrived on those Channel migrant boats over the Channel from Calais illegally, and they're basically put in an asylum hotel that you and I are delighted to pay our taxes to pay for. But don't worry, they're making a bit of spending money, sometimes up to £1,000 a week by working as food delivery riders, even though it's illegal for them to work. Thomas Godfrey, it's a fantastic scoop you've had, a couple of days in a row now. Development today, though, of course, is that the government's finally found out about this because they read The Sun, and now they're going to do something about it.
Well, supposedly so, we're told. We'll sort of have to see what progress they make on that, if they make any, or what they actually plan to do, whether they're going to go into the migrant hotels where these migrants are operating out of. I think what struck me when I was looking into this is just how easy it was. It's a case that within hours now of being processed, these migrants can be bussed into a hotel in any part of the country and almost immediately, through some of the Facebook groups we found, begin working and earning on these apps.
And explain to people how they're able to do that, because companies like Uber Eats, Deliveroo, whoever else it is, they are required to make the same checks. Every employer is legally required to check that someone is legal and allowed to work. Now, by definition, if you're a legal asylum seeker, you're not a legal migrant, you're not allowed to work.
No, and people in hotels have generally been here for less than 12 months, and so there are no circumstances in which they can work at all. A lot of people, though, will have legitimate Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat accounts and will sublet them illegally through Facebook. We found some available for rent for as little as £40 a week.
So how do they get access to it? Because I remember in your first report you were pointing out that some accounts were basically paying 40 different people.
Yeah, so there's one Just Eat dealer, as they've come to be known, and his account was 50 different Just Eat accounts all going into one bank account because the same person was operating.
So the idea that Just Eat didn't go, this is really strange, this man seems to be working, 40,000 hours a week. That's not possible.
Well, this is where the companies have failed in almost every way. And all of these companies say every time there's some sort of crackdown, they enthusiastically support it, but there's no actual sort of measures that they take to try and mitigate or just outright stop this from happening.
Well, they can stop anyone from something. There's no point in having any checks on the people you're giving these licences to do this unless you're going to say you cannot pass that on elsewhere. I mean, it's not even just a tax avoidance, encouraging illegal black market economy and encouraging yet another pull factor for people coming over illegally from Calais. There's also, I mean, I've said, I'm a woman. I've got a teenage daughter, and I've got friends with younger kids. They all do an Uber Eats. Oh, we're going out. Do you want to get a takeaway? I don't want an illegal migrant turning up on the door delivering an Uber Eats to a teenage girl. I don't. I think we are talking about a serious risk to people's safety at this point.
No, precisely. And I think,
Because, by the way, no, they're not all engineers and scientists. Some of them, I know this is going to blow everyone's minds, are criminals.
Well, absolutely. But, you look at the hotels where this racket, as the government have now called it a racket, the Conservatives have called it a racket, everyone seems to now agree this is a racket.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, went and visited an asylum hotel himself and has written to the companies and to the Home Office.
Absolutely. But at that asylum hotel he visited, it's one that we were looking at for a very, very long time. We know that there have been e-bikes there for months, but instead of fixing the problem, instead of cracking down, the Home Office and the people who run that hotel simply put up a fence with a black felt cover over the top to hide them from public view. I mean, it's kicking the can down the road.
Sorry, are you kidding me?
There's no...
So a load of people are in that hotel is entirely for asylum seekers who are not allowed to work. They know that. They're all bringing their bikes. They've got the other one, you see them, those really big black, these big boxes with with the logo on, and they bring them back. So the solution to the problem was not stopping them working, prosecuting them, or the company reporting them. The solution was hide them from public view so no one makes a fuss.
The hotel solution was to put them inside a big fenced-off area.
My God.
Where they can still cycle in and out of, they can still make their deliveries.
How helpful.
Helpful for them.
I mean, did they provide bicycle pumps as well? I mean, anything else?
I mean, this is a three-star hotel. We know the asylum hotel bill alone is $3.1 billion a year, $4.7 billion if you throw in the accommodation, the food allowances. I mean, that is, as we pointed out a month ago or so, the entire taxes of a city the size of Manchester.
Yeah, but there's a small point, though. Of course, these people can probably afford their own accommodation because they are working legally. But again, this is one of the pull factors. And when we talk about, how are we going to stop the boats, smash the gangs, whatever, the only way you're going to do that is you stop the pull factor, as in not worth coming here because you're never going to be able to stay, you're going to be deported, you end up in Rwanda or wherever, or you find it difficult to work. And we're told again and again, even French politicians say, the trouble is these guys can come, and not all women and children are in contradiction to what a Treasury Minister, Darren Jones, said the other day. A complete lie, by the way. They're all women and children. But these young men, they turn up here and they know they're going to be able to work. And the French have said, look, they know they're not going to have as many checks. They can work illegally. That's what they do.
Well, look, as part of this probe, we posed as a new arrival into the UK.
No offence, you don't look like you're from Eritrea.
Well, I've grown a beard, but that's about as far as I went in that endeavour. But it's on Facebook, we went into these groups, we posed as a new arrival into the UK, and within 10 minutes I've been offered several accounts by people who were willing to disregard the law to make money because they take a cut of it.
Of course, that was assuming that's the thing. So you hand out your licence, everyone takes a cut, and presumably no tax is paid on this.
Well, absolutely not. You're self-employed. It's the person who's subletting the account. It's their responsibility to do the checks.
And I'm sure, as upstanding members of the community, they would be paying all their taxes. And again, I mean, but also again, it does other people out of a job because there'll be lots of people who are looking for this kind of work who can't get it because, of course, these guys will basically work cheaper.
Absolutely, it's a supply and demand equation, right?
If you have the big companies doing this know it's happening and it's cheaper for them.
It's a licence to print money. It's a licence to print money because if you have more riders, you can pay them less. And
there's more competition.
From the delivery riders we've spoken to who are working legitimately, who are either British or are training here and work on the side with visas, perfectly legal, they say the only way to do Deliveroo full-time now is if you have your rent and meals paid for.
Because you couldn't afford it otherwise.
You couldn't afford it otherwise, because they don't make enough money.
They know that it's the business model, the government knows that, the HMRC knows that, while they're going after other people who've made a mistake in their accounts, and this is happening on a grand scale. It's mind-blowing. Your reaction, please, everybody. 0344 499 1000. Claire Pistolesworth, former Conservative Special Advisor in the Home Office. What is the solution?
You need to take their licence away to trade.
The company, the Uber Eats, the Deliveroo's...
The ultimate responsibility has to be with somebody like Deliveroo or Uber Eats because they know this is going on. They'll say that they don't, but they do. You need to start
50 grand. Everyone we find, 50 grand.
Absolutely. I think that's the only language
Doubles
that they'll ever
100 grand. Keep doubling it. Money is the only thing that's going to matter to them.
Absolutely is.
But you could actually take their licence away. I mean,
I think you should.
A landlord of a pub loses their licence to sell booze.
And this will be no different. So any licence they have to trade in a certain area, pull it. Absolutely.
This is what we need to do, don't we? I mean, again, the main thing is these people shouldn't be in the country in the first place, and certainly shouldn't be free to go off and get an illegal job. Fantastic work, Thomas. I can't wait for the next scoop. Let us know. Come back on as Thomas Godfrey's reporter of The Sun. I'm pretty sure you are going to want to have your say on that. Do get in touch. You can text the word talk your message to 87222. Message us at talkTV on X. As I say, give us a call 0344 499 1000. Lots more coming up. We've got Deputy PMQs coming up in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Angela Rayner facing the Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride. We'll bring you the highlights of that. Plenty more to come. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
unfortunately, look, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable tank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Great to have your company. With me in the studio, delighted to say, former Conservative Special Advisor at the Home Office. That's Claire Pistol, joining us for the whole show. And we dragged him in to watch PMQs with us. Peter Cardwell as well, of course, Talk presenter. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Now, we're going to go live to Deputy PMQs because, of course, it is Angela Rayner who is speaking right now, and she's been questioned by Mel Stride. Let's go straight to the chamber.
It is a pleasure to stand opposite the Right Honourable Lady. Despite what many may think, we have a great deal in common, not least that we both viscerally disagree with the Chancellor's tax policies. And it is great to see the Right Honourable Lady standing in temporarily for the Prime Minister for the second week running. Although I know there are many sitting behind her who wish this was a permanent arrangement. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, you will find many of their names amongst the 122 who've signed up to oppose the government's welfare bill. They say that the bill is dangerously rushed and ill thought through. So can the Right Honourable Lady explain why she thinks that she is right and 122 of her own colleagues are wrong?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, it's nice to face the latest wannabe at your dispatch box. I'll tell the Right Honourable member why we're pressing ahead with our reforms, and that is because we're investing £1 billion into tailored employment support, a right to try to help more people back into work, and ending reassessments for the most severely disabled who will never be able to work. Mr. Speaker, we won't walk away and stand by and abandon millions of people trapped in the failing system, left behind by him and his colleagues.
Stride. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady completely sidestepped my question. She can't even defend her own government's policy. Can she at least assure the House that the vote on Tuesday will actually go ahead?
On Tuesday. Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if he sort of listened to what I said because I was reading off the script, but what I can tell him, and I don't need the script, we will go ahead on Tuesday.
Well, there you have it, Mr. Speaker. There will be a vote in this House on Tuesday on the welfare bill, although many on the back benches could be forgiven for thinking they've heard this before with the winter fuel payment, where they were marched up the hill, and we all know where that story ended. But, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are absolutely clear. We will help her to get their bill through if they can commit to actually reducing the welfare bill and getting people off benefits and into work. Can the right honourable lady make that commitment right now? Yes or no?
Well, if ever we needed a reminder of the party opposite having no shames, it's their demands for this bill, Mr. Speaker. He demands a programme to help people into work, exactly what this bill does. After he left 1 in 8 young people out of the economy, he demands no new taxes from the party that raised taxes to record levels, and he demands further welfare savings, Mr. Speaker, from the man who was in charge as the welfare bill absolutely belittled. They say cut welfare bill, they failed. They say cut people in work, they failed. They say no tax increases, they failed.
That's right. Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid the right honourable lady has clearly not read her own legislation. The bill will see the number of people on welfare rising for every single year going forward. There is no commitment from the right honourable lady to cut the number of people on welfare. And even if they manage to deliver these reforms, almost every respected economist now says tax rises are all but inevitable in the autumn. But after the budget, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor said, and I quote, "I'm not coming back for more taxes." Mr. Speaker, British businesses have been hit again and again by Labour's economic mismanagement. They are desperate for certainty. So can the right honourable lady give them that certainty now and repeat to the House the Chancellor's promise not to raise taxes at the budget?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is a bit rich. Unbelievable. Inflation above 11%. The biggest tax rises by their party. I take no lectures. And on this issue in particular, Mr. Speaker, they can't make their minds up. First they said our reforms were taking too long, then they say they were rushed, then their front bench said our measures were too tough, and now they say they need to be tougher. No plan, no idea. I wonder why their party was left in such a mess.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House will have heard that the right honourable lady did not repeat the Chancellor's promise not to raise taxes. And Britain's businesses have today been put on notice. Tax rises are coming. Specifically, in her own area, despite Labour's promises to freeze council tax, the IFS says that the spending review will mean the biggest council tax increases in a generation, a £7 billion tax rise. And yet the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have repeatedly claimed that the government will not raise taxes on working people. So can I ask the right honourable lady, why doesn't she think that council tax is paid by working people?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I think they've got an absolute nerve when council tax rose every single year under their government. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I had to turn down the Tories on the LJ who wanted me to take away the precept to make sure that they could raise taxes above the 5%. We've kept it there, Mr. Speaker, while delivering money for local government where they had austerity, put taxes up and ruined the British economy.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when you cut out the blather, isn't the reality that this Labour government has condemned us to higher taxes, more debt, fewer jobs, more pain for businesses right up and down our country? Borrowing up, unemployment up, inflation up. Yet the right honourable lady tells us the government's plan is working. It's not just me who isn't convinced, Mr. Speaker. The people behind her are not convinced either. And neither are the public. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'm not even sure if the right honourable lady herself is convinced. So can I ask her, isn't she just a little embarrassed to be defending policies she doesn't even agree with herself?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm embarrassed every week that somebody comes here from their opposition who doesn't apologise for the mess they left this country country in. There was one party that crashed the economy and left families paying the price. We're putting working people first, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud. We've got a huge boost to the minimum wage, the biggest uplift to affordable housing in a generation, and expanding free school meals to 500,000 children. The Tories' choice, billions of pounds in unfunded tax cuts for the very wealthiest. We know where that gets us. It's the same old Tory failed approach. They haven't listened and they haven't learned a thing.
Go Boris!
Right then, well, that was a lively, also really crisp, to the point exchanges there between Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, standing in second week in a row for the Prime Minister. He's currently at the NATO summit in The Hague. Very convenient. All Prime Ministers love prancing around on the world stage and posing for photo ops with Donald Trump and rather than actually answering questions from the opposition or indeed their own backbench MPs. She was facing Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, who's put in place. Of course, we saw the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, asking her questions last week. Let me come to our guest in the studio. As I told you a few moments ago, Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Special Advisor at the Home Office, with us still, and Peter Cobwell as well, political commentator and, of course, talk presenter here as well. I suppose a question like who won, who lost there. I mean, she dodged every question, but she is able to sort of, she is able to please her backbenchers because they do know she doesn't agree with a lot of the policies. As he pointed out in his final question, aren't you just a little embarrassed to defend policies you don't actually agree with? But she didn't really defend those policies, and she doesn't agree with them.
You're absolutely right. I mean, never hear Keir sidestepping a very difficult, what was always going to be a difficult session, because there is arguably and practically probably the biggest rebellion from Labour since they got elected almost exactly a year ago. 9 days to go till the anniversary of that landslide, and look where they are. And Angela Rayner, in her view, probably defending the indefensible. She would have happily sat there and let Keir Starmer take this one, but of course didn't have that option. Mel Stride, yes, it was a bit scripted. It wasn't perhaps brilliant necessarily, but I thought he did very well at holding her to it was to the point.
He spelt it out very, very clearly.
And he knows this back to front as a former Work and Pension Secretary as well.
Exactly. He was the obvious person to choose this. He went in for the kill. But he pointed out, one of the first questions, wasn't it, Claire, was, can you explain why your government is right, but 122 Labour backbench MPs are wrong? Bearing in mind, they're all sitting behind her right there in the chamber. She's supposed to be, she's not appointed by Keir Starmer as Deputy Prime, as Deputy Leader. Anyway, the Deputy Prime Minister, there isn't one, is there? She's Deputy Leader of the party. She is, does she have the title Deputy Prime Minister? I think she does have that title.
She does.
But it's up to the Prime Minister whether there is one or not, isn't there? But she's elected by the membership. She's the sort of the lefty star. She's the sort of favourite with backbenchers. They don't like Keir Starmer. He was a necessary evil, wasn't he? They've already fallen out of love with him after within a year of him being elected. But that's quite a difficult answer to give, isn't it? Because she doesn't. There's no way in the world she believes in welfare cuts.
No, she is the sort of the doyen of the original left of the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer, is so far from that. He was just seen as the necessary evil to get them into number 10. But she is the one who supports exactly what they support. She's the trade union darling. She's
Employment
all of
rights
that.
bill.
Employment rights.
So give more money to everyone on the public sector payroll.
So she just loves all of that, but has to now toe the line because she's given this position as Deputy Prime Minister. She did it reasonably well. I did like her line about she doesn't need a script whilst also reading off a script.
She messed that line up because she was blatantly, openly looking down at a script, reading it.
Yeah. So if you're going to deliver a line like that,
because she had to have a script. Well, so does Keir Starmer. I think he learns his script in advance.
Yeah,
you never see him being able to talk off the cuff and being able to,
improvise.
Tony Blair was great at that. William Hague became Prime Minister, but very good. There are some people who are just very good at that.
David Cameron was also very good.
David Cameron was superb at it.
So the backs and forth you kind of enjoy, and you haven't got it with this, but this is a much better PMQs, I think, for Mel Stride than I think it's been for Kemi Badenoch for some time.
Agreed.
Yeah, certainly. But that no, I mean, she's very good when she was answering the Home Secretary, wasn't she, on the grooming gangs, but again, not PMQs.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think, but all Angela Rayner's responses were, you've got no shame, you failed, look at what you did. Again, maybe that can still work till July the 4th.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure, Peter, how long
There's got to be a point where they say, right, we've got to have a moratorium on 14 years. We've got to have a moratorium on that phrase, where we say, yes, OK, you look at the previous government, but the public will say, you've been in power for nearly a year and 9 days'
time. And we chose to get rid of the last government because they weren't good enough.
So what are you doing? How are you fixing this problem? And actually, I mean, the offer, interestingly, from the Conservatives, which I think is relatively clever in regard to saying they would force, that they're saying there are sort of 3 conditions that they will actually support this bill. Obviously, it never looks good to have the opposition supporting a bill to get it through, but asking for deeper welfare cuts. That was, of course, echoed at PMQ's wider programme to help people move off benefits and into work, and no tax rises in the autumn budget. They're never going to agree to that.
I thought that was also...
It's an interesting point to put forward.
One of the most telling things there, of course, was also the question about would the Deputy Prime Minister, would she repeat the Chancellor's promise not to raise taxes at the autumn budget? And there was and it's not been repeated for quite some time.
Yes.
She, answer came then on. She completely and utterly dodged that. Which I think was very, very crucial. Everyone now, if anyone paying attention, knows that taxes are going to go up. And it's a question of whether taxes on working people, I mean, again, as if employers' national insurance doesn't affect people, as if any tax on business doesn't affect working people because they're the people who are employed, but they're working for businesses. Across the council tax, as he pointed out, people pay council tax. But let's go back to just this particular welfare bill. It's next Tuesday. We've got 122 Labour MPs so far. We're up to about 130 in total of MPs, the ones who aren't Labour, but, were Labour, John McDonnell, people who were suspended from the party. And they're basically saying they will not sign up to this welfare bill, that this reasoned amendment will basically stop it from literally cut it off straight away. But we're talking about a welfare bill that barely does anything. It's going to cut, at best, if it worked. I don't even think it would work. We're getting £5 billion
that's nothing
off the bill.
welfare
bill. But it won't cut the actual bill. It's £5 billion less of an increase in the welfare bill than it would have been otherwise. And we're looking at £18 billion a year increase if you didn't have this. We don't have that money.
There are just people in the Labour Party and the John McDonnell types who will never say any increase in welfare is a bad thing. They will never say this needs to a handle needs to be got on the welfare bill, which is seriously out of control in this country. There are more and more people on it. Any measures to reduce that in any way, any measures to rationalise that, they will say no to. It doesn't matter what it is. But the fact that you've got some very serious people, select committee chairs, for
12
example,
select committee chairs. Meg Hillier, who chaired the Public Council Committee, who should know better?
Well,
should know better? I've seen enough of reports. I've interviewed her so often, and that woman does actually understand the unsustainability of the welfare bill. So why on earth she's voting against this?
And some of these people are not the usual suspects. This is cause for concern, and actually the methods that they have used, rather than doing what Steve Baker did, having a big WhatsApp group, writing out the message and saying, off you go, I'm the rebel commander, off you go and oppose Brexit. This has been done in a very different way. This has been little conversations in the corridors, little going into people's offices.
But this is because these MPs,
very effective.
These MPs are very scared, and certainly ministers calling up saying this is a confidence vote hasn't helped. Where they did, apparently there was a round of phone calls led by Downing Street and the whips to talk MPs.
That's not a position of strength.
They were trying to talk backbench MPs into voting with the government. They ended up with more MPs agreeing to vote against the government. Claire Bissell, how significant would it be if he has to put? I mean, Angela Rayner was asked, is this vote going to go ahead next Tuesday? Yes, she said it was. That may be I can imagine Number 10 go, oh no, we'll have to come up with a crisis of some sort that means that doesn't happen. How significant is it for a government less than a year into power to have a rebellion of this sort on a major flagship policy?
Well, it's enormous. I can't underestimate this. This is a brand new government who promised everything, delivered absolutely nothing, and now having to U-turn on practically every decision that they've made. It's enormous to Keir Starmer. Any authority that he had over his backbenchers is just going down the pan rapidly. He does have a get-out-of-jail-free card. I thought of this earlier, that the government had issued an instruction to, I think it was Department for Work and Pensions, and there's also an independent review into welfare reform.
It's not an independent review, it's, government ministers sit on it.
Alleged independent review. But that isn't going to report until the autumn.
We'll wait
so
until
he
then.
Could use
But
that.
nothing changes then, does it?
Of course it does.
Here's the question to both of you. I'll come to you first, Peter. When people were saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't last; he's going to be ousted very, very quickly," it's actually there are very limited mechanisms for actually ousting a sitting Labour Prime Minister, given the way that it's actually not the simple way that you get from a certain percentage of MPs within the Tory party. We've seen enough of them ousted. I thought, you're not going to oust the guy. He's going to be there for the next 4 or 5 years. Now I'm thinking, you know what? I don't know if he does survive. He has so little authority. No one likes him. No one rates him. He's not getting anything done. He hasn't got a spine. He hasn't got a backbone. He doesn't have any beliefs. He's not someone like Margaret Thatcher who could just drive things through. He's not someone who can charm people like Tony Blair. Has he lost all authority? Do you think he's going to actually survive?
I think he will survive because it is, as you say, so difficult. If it were a matter of Starmer going, I think it wouldn't be the usual way or the actual process that the Labour Party has to get rid of a sitting Prime Minister, which, as you say, is very, very difficult. I think it would be Angela Rayner, or it's never going to be Rachel Reeves, but someone like Rachel Reeves or Yvette Cooper going public and saying, I no longer have confidence in the Prime Minister. The likelihood of that happening, we're not there yet. We might get there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, we know with the Tories, certainly, whoever wields the sword never gets to wear the crown.
Michael
Lord
Heseltine.
Heseltine, exactly.
Yeah.
But do you think he's going to survive the full 5 years now?
I don't think he'll survive the full 5 years, no. I think...
And is Angela Rayner the next Prime Minister?
I also think no to that.
Interesting.
I think that there's an awful lot of people coming in the background, and it's going to be somebody that we don't really notice at the moment.
I think we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah.
It's not going to be West
Well,
streaming
the
around.
same with the next Tory leader.
Yeah.
It very rarely is whoever people think it is.
Exactly, someone will come.
Fascinating. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to take more of your calls. Lots coming in about those welfare reforms, about that sunsplash yet again on the channel. Migrant workers. Great to talk to the reporter who broke the story, but it is head in hands, screaming into your sort of stuff in terms of the abject incapability of governments to deal, on the police and others, to deal with any of these issues. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of them. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Many of the migrants that come here, they're coming here, they're fleeing countries that we've wandered into, whether it be Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, even Iran now as well. We've bombed the hell out of Iran, but there's no follow-up plan.
Well, yeah, but we haven't bombed. Hang on,
place.
Tobias, hang on. We haven't bombed the hell out of Iran at all. You know, as the government will tell you, nothing with us. We didn't do anything to do with the bombing of Iran.
What I'm saying is from a Western perspective, then that's what's happened.
Yeah, but they're not fleeing. They're not fleeing Iran because we bombed it. Is my point.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 12:24 is the time. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to be talking to Sebastian Gorka. He's a senior advisor to Donald Trump in the White House, talking to him live from Washington about NATO summit and what is going on and why the president thinks that Israel and Iran don't know what the F they're doing. His language, not mine. First up, then, let's get to more of your calls, because you definitely do know what you're doing. Let's go to Craig in Staffordshire, who's called in on 0344 499 1000 to have his say on those welfare reforms. Big topic of debate, Craig, in Deputy PMQs then. What did you make of it?
Well, Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Hi, Claire.
Hello.
Love the show. Absolutely love the show.
Thank you.
So let me just prefix this with saying I was raised with shame towards benefits and people on benefits.
Your family basically said you should be ashamed to be on benefits.
Yes, that was how I was raised. We were a working family. Yeah. Anything you want, you've got to work for it. You've got to earn it. So I started working at 12.
Wow.
I worked for 15 years before I had a car accident in 2017.
Yeah.
And then, I've got to say, I do not support Labour. I'm not a Labour supporter with the majority of what they're doing now, particularly Keir Starmer. But I am in support of these welfare reforms, mainly because I've witnessed personally people that are on PIP,
personal dependence payments, yeah.
That's right, yeah. Who are completely fraudulent. You know, they shouldn't be on it.
Can I just clarify? Just go back. You said you worked for years, then you had a car accident. So are you now living on disability benefits yourself? Are you able to work at all?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
So you need the benefits, and we as a civilised country, you've contributed as a worker. We all, and frankly, if someone thinks you shouldn't be given help for the state, I think frankly is immoral. There's no shame there at all. You have them because you need them.
Well, yeah, it took a long time for me to come round to it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sort of.
So how have you come across the people who you believe are swinging the lead?
Well, one was a friend from school many years ago. She was diagnosed with a degenerative condition and was like instantly given everything for disability. But this degenerative condition won't actually impact her until she's like in her 50s.
So she doesn't need any help now. And when she does, we should help her.
She's got a full-on disabled access house, lift.
Car?
She doesn't drive. But I tell you what,
she's missing a trick.
Down the road, and she's got a crutch in her arm, and she's going along like she's pretending to be a train.
She's just, the thing is, people think, some people who do that go, oh, yeah, well, she's playing the system. No, I think she's stealing from taxpayers. I think we should treat it as that. It's stealing.
Absolutely.
That I can understand. Are you worried that you're going to lose your benefits?
I am, mainly because, I don't know how these sort of fraudulent people got on so easily, because it took me 5 years.
Yeah.
And I was on my third application. I'd been to 2 tribunals. Nothing had changed health-wise.
Yeah, there is an issue, isn't there, with the people doing these assessments? And again, there need to be assessments, there need to be forms and things, but often they're done by non-medical people. They perhaps don't understand people's medical needs.
Yeah, absolutely. My last assessment I had with on this third application was just literally over the phone.
Yeah.
Where I could have said absolutely anything.
Well, I think we've just found out. Well, exactly. It's over the phone, I'm assuming it's got a lot worse since lockdown in 2020. Craig, such an interesting call. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling. Thank you. Let's go to Robert, who's in Hertfordshire, quickly. And Robert, you want to talk about the migrant delivery rider story. What do you want to say?
Well, I've got a couple of Robert's quick fixes. Number one, you put them all on a curfew. Okay, so you turn the reception desk at the hotels they're staying into a security desk. Now, you put them on a curfew. That means that if they can't go out, they can't work over night time. Now, if they break the curfew, you put them on an ankle tag. Because number one, they're over here anyway.
They should be sodding well tagged anyway.
Sorry?
They should be tagged anyway, shouldn't they?
Yes. I'll tell you what, another thing, I've been doing a little bit of research and I frightened the life out of myself last night. The migrants arriving on the beach are not having their DNA taken. Now, this should be mandatory because then it gives the European a huge database. It stops people from re-entering the country again. And when there's a sex crime, I'm not saying it's going to be a Muslim or migrants, but it narrows the field down a bit. I can't believe why the DNA has not been taken.
Okay, all right, good. But Robert, I'm I'm going to take that, and I'm going to put that idea to Claire very briefly. We've got to go to a break, but Robert, thank you very much indeed. I like the curfew and then the tagging. Taking dinner, presumably we do fingerprinting and all that of people who arrive.
Yeah,
please tell me we do.
Yeah, we absolutely do.
Former Home Office, by the way.
The problem is the data sharing, and when Brexit happened, obviously we lost contact with the databases abroad.
Yeah, but we can still share data.
We can, we don't. And that's the really sad thing about it. We need to actually sort that out with Europe.
These are political choices, not practical choices,
absolutely.
aren't they? Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking to Sebastian Gorka, who's the senior advisor to the President Donald Trump. He's back in the White House. We'll talk to him up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. It's just coming up to 12:32. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall, former Home Office Special Advisor, is still with us. I'm delighted to be welcome now to the show, live from Washington. Sebastian Gorka, his Deputy Assistant to President Trump, and the Senior Director for Counter-Terrorism at the White House. A very good afternoon to you, Sebastian.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
7:30 in the morning.
An early start for you, middle of the day for us. Thank you very much, Dean, for joining us. Can I ask you, first up, let's talk about this new report that has come out, a leaked classified document that's come out from the American government that suggests that from early assessments, with low confidence, admittedly, leaked to the American media, that those bunker buster bombs, that incredibly audacious bombing of the Iranian nuclear sites didn't obliterate the nuclear program for Iran and may have only set it back not just by years, but only by months. Is that true or not?
Julia, don't be a silly girl. I'm not going to comment on reports of classified documents.
Well, Donald Trump has. Donald Trump's report.
And he's my boss, okay? If it were true, which I'm not going to qualify, then Iran wouldn't have agreed to the ceasefire. So just use common sense, please, my dear.
OK, you're saying Donald Trump has arrived at the NATO summit and he's argued that, the reason why we've got a ceasefire, which does appear now to be holding between Iran and Israel, is because their nuclear capability was wiped out. But we also have reports, including from the IEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, that there's concern that the enriched uranium was actually removed from sites like Fordo before the airstrikes and is now somewhere in Iran.
And there were reports that President Trump wouldn't win the election in 2016. There were reports that he wouldn't win the election in 2024. So I'll stick with the guy who actually wins every time. Thank you, Julia. And that man is Donald J. Trump, the incumbent president.
Well, he doesn't win every time. Didn't win in 2020, did he?
Yes, he did.
Oh, there we are. We're back to that. What did you make of his language yesterday? I'm going to play a brief clip for those people who've been under a stone, maybe under Fordo Mountain in Iran over the last 24 hours. This is what President Trump said about it looked like was breaking of that Iran-Israel ceasefire yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have UN reply in Iraq?
That's what he had to say. What do you make of his language, Seb?
I love it. As a friend of mine on his show commented yesterday, he said, that's why 77 million Americans voted for Donald Trump, because he lives in the real world. He says it as it is, unvarnished, and bless him.
OK. He's been very unvarnished in his conversations with NATO fellow members, and I have to say, I think we discussed it way back when, after 2016, his first term in office. It was very clear that he didn't see why American taxpayers should fund all the defence umbrella for European countries when they didn't pay their minimum requirement of 2% of GDP towards their defence capabilities. I was with him all the way, defended him on that publicly. He's been saying it again. We've now seen in the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte being able to help push everybody up, I think apart from Spain, to a commitment to 5% of GDP by 2035. Is that going to be enough? And is a lot of those commitments, are they actually worth the paper they're printed on? Because a lot of it is like, we'll pay Mauritius a big sum to give away the Diego Garcia base. We'll claim that's part of our defence spending. Are you still concerned that Donald Trump's plain speaking on this issue is not matched by real money from Europeans?
Well, the trend line was incredibly good, completely positive in the first Trump administration. When we arrived, less than a third of NATO members actually stuck to the 2% GDP target force goals. By the end of our first administration, that number had risen to almost 70%, and it was real expenses on real capabilities that make the alliance safer collectively. So we want that trend line to continue. And, I don't want to pick on individual countries.
Go on. You want to.
Lithuania is a champion. You look at the Baltic states, look at those nations who've actually suffered under the boot of jackbooted communism, and they committed to 5%. I think the first week we were here in the White House, when there are nations that understand that this is about being serious, the president recognizes them, and as such, we believe the alliance is stronger than it has ever been. So make it real, make it relevant to all NATO capabilities. But what we have achieved think about this, we are 158 days in. It is incredible what President Trump has done in less than 6 months' time.
Okay. Look, you're saying it's stronger than it's ever been. There's no doubt at all. You've got countries like Poland, the Baltic states, including Lithuania, they've upped their spending. Germany has finally woken up to the Russian threat. Do you think that what Britain is doing is enough?
Yeah, I love coming on British shows, but as a politically commissioned officer of the president in the National Security Council, I'm not going to target out individual countries just because the host doesn't like the colour of the government you have in 10 Downing Street. So
I'll criticise any government. Don't worry. I'm an equal opportunity critic.
We want all NATO nations to act like serious allies. That applies to every government, every prime minister, and every president.
You say NATO is stronger than ever, and yet Donald Trump kind of put the wind up an awful lot of European leaders, not only with his urging restraint from Ukraine and Zelensky, whilst apparently thinking that somehow Putin is the victim in the Ukraine war, but also saying yes.
Julia, I'm not gonna let you get away with that. That's garbage. That's utter rubbish.
Which
garbage,
bit?
Rubbish.
Which bit?
Rubbish. Okay. The president has never ever said that Putin is the victim. Stop it, Julie. You need to get over
in the White House, when he was attacking Zelensky, he actually talked about Putin having to put up with these outrageous claims about him. He made him the victim.
I'm not letting you get away with it.
He is the aggressor. Okay, I'm going to come back to Russia, but I want to ask you about comments that Donald Trump made about how there are different interpretations of Article 5 in the NATO treaty, which most people, including me, would say is the attack on one is attack on all, pointing out, and in fact we had a former British Defence Secretary on earlier pointing out the exact wording doesn't say you have to come to the aid of a country, you have to consider what you could do in terms of helping a fellow country. Can you tell us right now, as a senior aide to the President, that if there were an attack on Lithuania, that you've just mentioned, the Baltic states, that America would come to the military aid of that country?
I think it's better that your viewers and your listeners actually do their own homework, because the NATO alliance was created with the shortest ever treaty in modern history. I cut my teeth on NATO issues back in the 1990s, and it's just 14 paragraphs long. It's the shortest treaty of its kind. And if you read Article 5, it is very clear what Article 5 says. It has been misrepresented for 60 plus years, but it says all NATO nations are required to respond to an attack on one of those NATO nations. However, Julia, and this is what the president's talking about, it doesn't say how they are required to respond. That's the rub. It is a community of people who share values. It is the pinnacle of Western civilization's military capabilities. But at the end of the day, it's not something that forces you to nuke a country if one soldier has put boots on your territory. I recommend every single viewer and listener read article.
Okay. I don't think we were talking about nuking, but I think we know the playbook from Russia in Crimea and then in the Donbass region of Ukraine, that it doesn't start with tanks rolling over the territory in a very clear attack. It does start with, they were called the little green men, weren't they? Men who not even in uniform, but with steel cap boots, walking into a territory. That is what is likely if it could happen, if it does happen in the Baltic states. Would America militarily defend the Baltic states?
America will do whatever is required in the interests of our country. That's what America
not
means.
As NATO, then.
Julia, you've got to stop it, okay? You're constantly trying to undermine the most successful president of the modern age.
I'm not. That's certainly not true. I've been full of. Seb, I know you follow me on social media. I have been full of praise for Donald Trump, what he's done in Iran. I don't undermine him at all.
You have to salt our interviews with these silly little infidels.
With facts and questions.
What fact? What fact do you? The current hypothetical cannot be deemed a fact. You're asking me a hypothetical.
I'm asking you, would he intervene?
That's not a fact. It's a hypothetical.
You said I was undermining him by asking a question.
Facts and hypothetical.
All right. If you're not going to answer that, let's talk about Israel and Iran. Again, fully support Donald Trump's action on that. I think he absolutely gets the significance of Israel as the only democratic state in the Middle East, as fighting a civilizational battle against the mad mullahs, the Islamic fundamentalists in Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah and elsewhere. And I love that Donald Trump gets that in a way that it would appear the Democrats no longer do. What I don't understand is why he doesn't understand that Ukraine is in exactly the same predicament in their battle with Russia. Why does he view Israel and Ukraine so differently?
I really don't. I love how you think you know how President Trump thinks.
I'm very based on what he's saying.
Why on earth has he invited the Premier of Ukraine to the Oval Office? Why? Because he doesn't think it's a problem, Julia?
I didn't. Well, he did invite him if he wanted to do a deal on minerals.
No. Julia. It wasn't about minerals. It was about tying our two nations together to guarantee that no country would invade.
There's a country invading them right now.
Julia, you're obsessed with pieces of paper that mean nothing, just like
No, I'm not. No, I don't think pieces of paper count at all. Action is what counts. Which is why I love what Donald Trump did for Israel against Iran.
I will explain to you once more what the meeting in the Oval was about. Much more important than any specious piece of paper that provides...
Not talking about pieces of paper.
Stop, Julia. You're interrupting me. Let me finish. It's about making sure that no nation dares invade Ukraine again. Which, by the way, can we just do a little bit of an overview? Why was it that Putin refused to invade anywhere when we were in the White House the first time? Why is that? Why was it that Ukraine was only invaded under the watch of George W. Bush when it came to South Ossetia and Georgia, and then Ukraine under Obama, and then Ukraine a second time under Biden? You seem to miss these things.
Okay, well, what did Donald Trump do in 2016 when Crimea had already been seized by Russia? I don't remember you doing very much.
What did we do? I'll tell you what we did. Instead of sending them blankets like Obama did, we sent them the most effective anti-tank weapon possible, the man-portable Javelin missile. That's what we did.
So you thought that Ukraine had the right to self-defense and should oust Russia. This is the thing. You're talking about pieces of paper. I've not mentioned pieces of paper. We're talking about action. I ask you, why does Donald Trump view Ukraine Ukraine in its relationship with the Russian invaders any differently to Israel and what they're dealing with Iran? Why does he understand Israel's predicament and the need, civilizationally, morally, militarily, in every other way, the need to take Iran on? Why does Donald Trump not appear, from what he says himself and his own actions, I'm not reading his mind, I haven't got a crystal ball, from what he said and what he does himself, that he doesn't see Ukraine as being in the same position that Israel is with Iran, where Ukraine is with Russia?
So your interpretation is patently wrong. The similarities between both of those cases are obvious. Why? Because President Trump is expending all of his international capital to make two things happen. Peace to be established on the Eurasian landmass between Russia and Ukraine, and peace finally to break out in the Middle East after 46 years of an Islamo-fascist regime being a threat to all of us. It is exactly the same. The fact that you missed that analog is really quite...
But peace in Ukraine would be at the price of giving away 20% of Ukrainian territory to its invading
you have no knowledge of that. You have no idea what's going on.
That's what Steve Witkoff was talking about.
You have no...
That's what Steve Witkoff has talked about in public interviews. I'm not making it up. He's been on American television talking about the Donbass region and talking about Crimea.
I know Steve Witkoff. I bump into him regularly in the West Wing. I guarantee you.
It's not a figment of my imagination. You're not asking Israel to give up territory to make peace with Iran. You've used force to force Iran to make peace. To cease, a ceasefire at least, but not taking the same tack with Russia.
You're being hectoring now. You're hectoring.
No, I'm asking you a question.
You're hectoring.
Oh, come on, you're a grown-up man. Don't be silly.
No, you're hectoring.
Why do you not see the difference?
There is a massive difference, and the fact is, Steve Witkoff, I guarantee you, has never said we are giving up on that territory. Don't be a fake news purveyor.
I didn't say he said that they were going to give up, but that's what the negotiations are about.
You don't know that. You don't know that. You're not in the room, Julia. I'm sorry. I know you've got FOMO, but you're not in the room.
Oh, look, our time is up. We're again. I mean, Sebastian, it's always good getting you on. I don't know what we learned from that, I have to say, but I'm a little bit more worried for Ukraine and Lithuania.
That's what you learned.
Oh, it's always good to get you on. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Senior Director for Counter-Terrorism. Claire Pearsall's face has been a joy throughout, as probably was mine as well. Do you know what? I very much like Sebastian Gorka. There are very few men allowed to patronise me in that way, but I find it quite amusing when he does it.
Yes, it is.
Claire, your thoughts?
That was a masterclass in actually saying nothing while saying a lot of things and doing the patronising there, pat on the head, you're missing out and you don't like it.
Can we have a little jingle with Seb going, Julia?
Yeah, I think you need to. You absolutely need to. Cut it through with the Trump comment of yesterday. It will be brilliant. So, yeah, I mean, nothing. We learned nothing. And I find it really, really interesting that he wouldn't answer what is the difference between talking about Israel, talking about Ukraine, when the situations are so incredibly similar.
Yeah,
very
they really
easy
are.
questions to answer.
I consider these to be very simple black and white issues. Yeah. And he sees Russia and Iran in such different ways, and they are both existential threats in different ways.
But why not go and explain why? Yeah. If Sebastian's worried about how we're viewing Trump, then give us the reasons, and then we'll have a look at it.
It's almost like the reason why I asked the question. 12:48 is the time. I was hoping to squeeze in another call. I'm going to do my best, but up next, we're going to talk about BBC staff being issued with new editorial guidelines telling them they must represent unpalatable and offensive views, even if they don't like them themselves. A, why do journalists need to be told that? And B, some of those unpalatable and offensive views are basically the views of the majority of people in this country. But remember, the people at the BBC don't like us, even though we have to pay their wages. We're going to talk about that up next with a former BBC Trust member. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
many of the migrants that come here, they're coming here, they're fleeing countries that we wandered into, whether it be Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, even Iran now as well. We've bombed the hell out of Iran, but there's no follow-up plan.
Well, yeah, but we haven't bombed.
Hang
on, Tobias, hang on. We haven't bombed the hell out of Iran at all. You know, as the government will tell you, nothing to do with us. We didn't do anything to do with the bombing of Iran.
What I'm saying is from a Western perspective, then that's what's happened.
Yeah, but they're not fleeing. They're not fleeing Iran because we bombed it. Is my point.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:51 is the time. Claire Pistol's still with us, joined now by Richard Tate, who's a former member of the BBC Trust. A very, very good morning. Oh, sorry, afternoon to you, Richard.
Hi, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. I want to talk about some new guidelines that have been, editorial guidelines that have been updated and put out by the broadcaster to their staff, so it's production staff and reporters and newsreaders, and they have been told they must represent unpalatable and offensive views, even if they disagree with them. Minority views, even if some people find them offensive. They're reminded their impartial output may require the inclusion of opinions which some communities or groups may argue ought not to be included because they find them unpalatable or offensive. Now, this comes after years of the cancel culture where certain topics just weren't even touched, even though other broadcasters and other media have been talking about them. But are you as amazed as I am, as a former member of the BBC Trust, that journalists at the BBC, our state-funded broadcaster, feel they have to be told that they have to be impartial and that sometimes they're going to have to put on views that some people might not like?
Well, I think most BBC journalists know that already. That's always been, you're quite right, it's always been the rules of the game, which is that you leave your personal views and your personal prejudices at the front door when you go into the newsroom, and that applies to ITN and Sky as much as it applies to the BBC. I think it's more a reflection of the way we now live and popular culture. That you're right, we've now got to a stage where there is a cancel culture around. What's different from a few years ago is that whereas in the past people would complain, why should you have that view? I don't agree with that view, you're biased. They'll now say, not only should you not have that view, you should ban those people from ever appearing again.
Yeah.
And if you don't have them, if you have them on, immediately we know you're biased. And that's a very difficult environment for broadcasters because, particularly the BBC, everyone pays for the BBC. Everyone has the right to have their views represented.
So they get the flack.
With credit.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think the BBC aren't a victim of the cancel culture. They are part of the cancel culture. I know a number of people, and I'm pretty sure I'm included, judging by the invitations I have got in the past and then you don't get, and you know what the point of difference is, you know, if you have certain views on whether or not you think trans women are women, they're not. Whether you think that climate change is the biggest disaster facing the world and needs to be tackled by, you know, ruining everyone's economy and everyone's lives. Whether you think that mass uncontrolled immigration might be a bit of a problem. Whether we should talk about grooming gangs, even going back to 2016, talking about Brexit. It is very obvious to me, having done a lot of work at the BBC over the years, just going in as a pundit, how incredibly biased most people, not all, most people are working at the BBC in terms of their views, their reaction to that, and their treatment of people like that. And there's no doubt at all that people's views have been censored. I mean, but it's by the BBC out of choice.
Well, I think there's a difficulty with that argument is that if you talk to people on the left, they'll say exactly the same.
Yeah, but it's whether or not they can back it up with facts.
If you talk to supporters of Hamas, and if you talk to, one of the issues we now have in newsrooms is, and we're having it in newspaper newsrooms as well as in broadcast newsrooms, is that people are very, very upset and wound up, understandably, by what they're seeing in the Middle East, but in different ways. And there are people who are passionate defenders of the right of Israel to defend itself and equally passionate defenders of the cause of a Palestinian independent state.
But there's a difference because the left
playing
wants
itself out in newsrooms.
No, but there's a very big. I mean, I don't think that debate's going on so much. I think it's actually far more on one side than the BBC. But the point is that people on the right haven't been largely demanding that we don't hear those views and that those people are cancelled or thrust out of the BBC or any other, or not to be heard, whereas we have heard that from the left.
Well, yes, but the BBC actually hasn't been guilty of cancel culture. I mean, it was a very senior BBC executive actually told a select committee a couple of years ago, we don't believe in cancel culture. I mean,
they do. I'm sorry, they do.
Well,
people get Here's the thing. Here's what's changed. Justin Webb, Radio 4, refers to trans women, i.e. males. He says he was chastised. He was formally chastised for that by BBC disciplinary body. Maxine Coxall, the BBC news reader, who the other day said reporting a report about heat problems for the aged pregnant people, corrected it to women with a roll of the eyes. She's been supported by the BBC, but she wouldn't have been 2 years ago. She would have also been told off for that.
I'm not sure about that.
Yes,
I know.
I am very sure about that.
I know because I have a lot of my people who work in the BBC newsroom. A lot of my I'm a professor now at Cardiff University. A lot of my students go and work in the newsroom. I know these arguments take place, but it's much more, I'm afraid, much more complicated than you think from your perspective. I mean, you have a very strong view. I respect your very strong views. Very strong views are part of democratic society. But I think there is, I mean, if you look at, say, gender, which has been a very, very difficult issue for all broadcasters.
Well, it has. I mean, it's not. It's a really easy issue.
And the use of language, Julia, we both know it. We both have to be so careful how we use language, because otherwise we're going to get pigeonholed.
We should use biological and fact. We should be biologically factual language. It's really simple.
Yeah, but we're all conscious that what we say, people are looking at and saying, oh, well, that's what she thinks, that's what he thinks. I mean, I would actually defend, the BBC's journalism on gender, which is a really difficult area. Hannah Barnes was the person who did the investigation into the Tavistock for Newsnight.
Oh, no, can I point out?
No, Stephen Nolan did the investigation into Stonewall for a podcast.
Richard, this stuff had been investigated by numerous other people, like Helen Joyce.
I look at a piece that I thought was a good bit of journalism.
The BBC only reported it once their own people had done those reports. That Women's Hour ignored Helen Joyce and her book on trans and all these issues, saying pretty much exactly the same stuff, printed years earlier. It's been completely censored.
But you can't dismiss pieces of journalism.
No, that journalism was great. It was very late to the party, and it was only accepted because it was done by BBC people.
You can't produce that sort of journalism in an institutionally corrupted system.
Shall we say that other people, the dam had burst. The dam had burst by that point, and it was safe to cover it, which was why they finally did it.
Hannah Barnes was 21. And Stonewall, I think, was 21. I mean, this is 2 or 3 years. This has been four.
I can assure you there have been plenty of investigations. All of that information was well known already before then. I can absolutely assure you. I speak to a lot of BBC people who are very worried about being able to speak their full minds, even in the office, let alone what they can say.